TDS, you're the highest. You're the only one out of consensus. Talk us up on AOE esports.
Yeah, gas us up on these guys.
So here's the thing: I have absolutely no hope for AOE. Just
Bad
plain
start.
and
Bad
point
start.
from there.
I'm not gonna lie.
The thing is,
I mean, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another season of the Salt Mine. This is Season 4, Episode 1, because we go by Euphoria rules, and we're calling each split a brand new season. And we might as well, because each split is going to kick off, as always, with our rankings of all the teams. We're joined by Quax for the first time for a preseason episode. Quax, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome. And yeah, 4-person panel. We usually do 5 for this, but I think shrinking down to 4 is probably for the best. Because these always end up
Especially with how late we're recording
Oh,
this, it would go
mega
on for a
long.
million years. If we had a fifth opinion, we'd never leave the call.
We've had like some 1 a.m. recordings of these
Mhm.
before. So I think this is all
Days.
good and well, especially because even though we only have 4 opinions for each of the teams, we do have lots of extra news to talk about. I guess we could talk about the elephant in the room first. We're recording this on Tuesday the 11th, which means the big region merger news just dropped today. Who knows what it'll be being referred to by the end of the week, but it's the LCA, it's the League Championship Americas, it's the Brazil LATAM NA merger. Whatever you want to call it, it's coming, it's happening. We will probably do a deeper dive on this, hopefully with some friends from CB Law English at some point in the future.
We got a lot of time.
We got a lot of time.
for it.
I figure we
Yeah.
can talk about it
We need
really
more
briefly, really high level. Especially about, I mean, the most important thing for us here in the NACL world is that there is now a guest slot that has promotion and relegation from the NACL. Technically, it's the NACL and the LLN will play up against each other for the spot in the North Conference.
Oh, right. It's not 2.
We will not lose to the LLN, so it's an NACL spot, baby. I'm sorry,
But imagine if we did.
Imagine if we did.
that.
It's also
if we did, we're clipping this.
it's also not clear to
Yeah.
me. Like I read through the announcement, and the announcement isn't really specific about it. And then there's those little like images that the LCS account posted, and those go more in depth than the article does for some reason. That one the little images call out that for the North Conference, the NACL and LLN will play up against each other to determine who goes to the promotion tournament. There's nothing like that for the South Conference, so I don't know if the South Conference is just only CB LOL Academy and not
so
LLN.
the main thing that I want to know here, and this is something that I try to bring into attention when talking about LLA, and it's important to note for why the LLA is dead, and it's not because of any stupid reason that anyone has said. The reality is that LLA is currently composed by either Argentina or Mexico. That's the 2 nationalities that reign supreme currently in what is LLA. So realistically, and by pretty logical standard, one is here, the other is here, geographically. So before everything that was LA, there was Latin America North and Latin America South.
Mhm.
I think maybe a chance that because there exists currently in LA, there exists obviously the tier 2, which is much more reminiscent of what EU has. Not what NAU has, but what EU has, which is the regional leagues. There's regional leagues for the South, there's regional leagues for the North. So what could happen is they break up both sides so that one goes northern, one goes southern. And that would be the countries of the north, which include my country, Colombia, then the Caribbean islands and all of those. And then you go south, which include Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and all those, with Brazil, which is the closest to them. Because there even has been instances, by the way, I don't know if people knew this, of Argentinian players playing in CBLOL. So it just makes much more sense because of the distance.
Yeah. That makes sense. So maybe that's how it's going to be. Like I don't know. I thought LLN was like the EU Masters. Is it not? Is LLN just like the northern countries?
So LLN is northern countries.
Oh, okay. So
There's
maybe that is it, because we
LLN.
play
Yeah, that's the thing.
NACL
So
plays against
there's some big
LLN,
guy.
maybe CBLOL Academy plays against LLS. That feels broken to me. Like, why is the
Yeah.
weakest of the three regions the one getting cut in half for their participation in the promotion tournament? Like, LLN is going to lose to us every time, and I bet LLS is going to struggle against CBLOL Academy. I would think if you let them combine forces, maybe they could beat a CBLOL Academy team sometimes. But I don't
I
know.
will say I'm in disagreement. I think they should this. So as an LLA person, I will say I feel like this is the best thing that could happen, or not. Maybe not best thing. Best thing would be that they can have their league and everyone is happy about it. The reality is not the case. They were already bleeding, and I don't only mean bleeding money. I mean bleeding in everything. They were cut.
Yeah.
They already cut to 6-team league. So they were already down. They were before a 7-team league. Now they are currently a 6-team league. I know there's been quite a lot of potential that maybe some teams are going to be caught up. Tier 2 in Latin America is in dire spots, at the very least, for what I've seen in the northern side. I'm trying to get into any sort of contact with trying to cast or do anything here, and Tier 2 is a pretty big wasteland. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if maybe I'm looking on the wrong side because Facebook is still something here, so maybe that's where I should be looking at. But reality is that LLA is nowhere near close to be a sustainable enough region for it to have its own league. At the very least, not right now. So the best thing is to just try and cut their losses, get the teams that are already known. Maybe something like Leviathan and R7 could be the teams that remain, and then after that try and go up the rankings, start from zero, because there is public in LLA. The problem is that the attention that we can have here, and also the ecosystem, the infrastructure, the money, is not necessarily the same as any other developed country. Like, we are a third world country with not enough access, or third world country, no, third world. We have a lot of third world countries that don't have a lot of access to certain things. So that just makes it really difficult to be able to compete in certain aspects with other regions. And I think that trying to be smaller as for now, but included with the rest, can be much better for a future development than just throwing them into the line, or not throwing them into the line, throwing them in their own pond and making us believe that we're something bigger. Because in reality, they're not.
Yeah, I think it's the old metaphor of like cutting off. You gotta like, what's like the joke? If you like get bit by a certain snake or something, like the only solution, or it's like the zombie. It's like the zombie movie thing. Like if you get bit by a zombie in the arm, you got to cut the limb off to survive, right? Like that's one thing that's happening for some of these regions. But the second thing that I probably harp on a couple of times when we talk about this is this will just, for everybody, and I think most importantly, like LLA and CBLOL especially, this is just going to really heighten the competition level. And
I agree.
Yes, you could say like, oh, but I understand the debate of yes, we want our own CBLOL league, we want our own league, right? We want our own LLA league that we could see successful. The problems with that is, one, at least for what TDS you just said, it's not a sustainable thing that's going to work. I understand the CBLOL problems, like theirs was actually flourishing, like they were flourishing, but the reality is, the second point that comes through for CBLOL is that if you want to, try to establish yourself as the best team in the Americas, you are loving this situation because you are going to be playing the best teams from North America now. And more importantly, the most important part to me is consistently, right? Because yes, I understand CBLOL teams are going to run into North American teams in international tournaments. We've already seen it happen. We've seen CBLOL teams have sometimes good showings, but for the most part, they've kind of gotten bodied by North America. Now you're going to consistently get to play them, and that will likely make you better, even if it does suck in the short term that you're losing some of those CBLOL teams. In the long run, I feel like all these fans are going to look back and be like, man, if do we even think we'd be able to get to the possibility of competing with the Cloud9s of the Americas if we hadn't joined this Super League? So that's what I just keep thinking about is the value of gameplay upgrading for these regions.
One thing I also want to quickly mention that obviously this may be obviated by the fact that obviously North America has never in their lives considered this, and it doesn't have to do anything with player-based game or anything like that. I feel like it's a really important part of economics. Most countries have a really lower what is it called, value for their money compared to the
GDP.
dollar, right? I don't
No,
remember the exact way to put it.
currency value.
Value of the currency.
Yeah, the
Oh,
currency
okay,
value
yeah.
compared to the dollar. So for any LLA, let's say the LLN team that ends up here, like their value goes 3 times higher to whatever they had before, just because they are now going to be in dollars. Like that is a huge difference maker, and that's something that not a lot of people consider, because dollar wise for a lot of these teams, they were on the. I would assume players, as for as much as they were getting, I would assume the normal salary was what, for a professional player, I would say between 10 and 50K in dollars. But that is a lot of money here. Like that is a lot of money here that you can make a lot of. The problem is that obviously comparatively to what NA was at, that's what changed. That's something that no professional player right now in the LCS is making. So the difference in that sort for any team that ends up getting into that league is like really making a huge jump in terms of the amount of money that they get. Like that is a huge value factor here, because you have to take into account the difference in currency for some of these countries as well. Like even for Brazil and the like, maybe now if they pass through just their currency to dollars, which I assume would be the more normal approach, or the other LLN team, that is a bigger jump for them to make in terms of how much revenue they get as well.
I'd see that. I mean, in response to Slayer's point, the weird thing about this to me, and I suspect this will change over time, as like the format messes and changes over the years. At least this starting format, though, it really does kind of feel like we're still separate regions, which is very strange.
Yeah.
We're like a long distance couple that you're not sure if we're really together or not. Like it's. Are you guys really the same league? You only see each other like twice a year, and that is what it is. Because it's like we play North Conference first seed plays South Conference first seed in the winter split once to decide who goes to the new international tournament. Sounds like we don't play each other at all in spring, because we just send North Conference champ and South Conference champ both just go to MSI after their distinct seasons. And then at the end of summer, we have a joint playoffs. So we play one tournament together a year. So we have like one matchup between our first seeds at the start of the year and one tournament together at the end of the year. And that's kind of all the cross play between the conferences we have. That's very strange to me. I would hope that in the future there's like a couple weeks of cross conference play or something in the regular season.
I would hope that, obviously when we have two different kind of divisions in the same region, that we're playing each other more, right? Like that's the whole idea. Is I think that would be, advantageous to Brazil too, because kind of going off of what Slayer said about like competition and the fact that it'll get steeper, like them playing against North America would make them better, right? Playing against better teams, being able to get that practice would at the end of the day strengthen the region. And I also feel like the people that are upset that CBLOL is going to be, losing 4 teams, you have to keep in mind, if you look at the most recent season, the top 2 teams from the CBLOL, which was Vivo, Keydstars, and Loud, they went 13-5 and 12-6 respectively in the spring season. But the bottom teams went 15-3 and 4-14, 7-11, and 9-9. So it really was like those bottom 2 teams in particular were just fodder at that point, right? Being able to win only 3 games out of 14 or 3 games out of 18, actually, you don't really lose a lot from kind of discarding teams like that. And I also kind of feel like that can go for, the LCS too here in America too, right? If we're losing 2 teams, but they're both bad teams that at the end of the day don't care about developing talent, then it doesn't feel like we're missing out on a lot so much as we are strengthening the region by having the better players stay in. And we've already seen the effects of that just this year with us downsizing just to 8 teams. It feels like the region has gotten better through that. And it feels like if we're downsizing, while it does suck that we're losing players while we are losing jobs, it feels like the competition within us is getting stronger with how scarce the spots are getting.
100%.
Well, ideally is that they keep the better talent around with that for as much as possible. I will say though, one quick point that I wanted to make also with playing cross conference. I do agree. I think that has to be something that has to be looked more into. But at the same time, I understand maybe why that's not as much of the case as it probably is. Probably as of now. And the main reason is trouble time. The distance
Mhm.
between US and Brazil is
Yeah.
really long. Like it's no Europe. Like we were actually talking about this before
Right.
before the broadcast. Distance between European countries, laughable. Distance between EU and Brazil is you could potentially be making that same trip to Europe
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
time that
Yeah.
you're going there. So it's actually quite a long distance for players, and for how little time or how quick the splits go by with how much game time is in between for some of them, especially now that there's 3 splits per year. I feel like there's not going to be enough downtime to allow for those trips to happen.
Yeah.
This is giving me the perfect time for an analogy. Football has the same problem. In Latin America, even when there is a lot of matches, there's problems because you have 3 days to rest, but you have to play every 3 games. Distance between
Mhm.
countries is at the very least 8 hours by plane sometimes. That's a huge, longest distance to be moving country by country to rest not even 3 days, to rest a half a day to play 3 days later. That's a big
Yeah.
problem, and I think that that's also something that League of Legends has to either get accustomed to or solve in the long run. One thing I think could be potentially a good idea is instead of making it cross conference, it would be fun if every year it's just like the LPL where there's groups. So instead of doing cross conference, it's just a set of 2 groups that you draw into to play cross teams, and so you get maybe 2 LCS teams into the South American League, and they have to go there to play for the at the very least the year, or for one split, and that way at the very least you have a little bit more in between the teams instead of having to play cross conference. Could be a nice mix up at the very least, and gives
Yeah.
more time to prepare for that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point. Even while the analogy was different, like we got to make sure we don't factor in Europe because as funny as it is to talk about geographically, like that's why Europe can do such different things
Yeah.
compared to any other
Yeah.
part of the world is because of just
Mhm.
how little travel time they have to do. And just to quickly piggyback off that point, the Gordo TS you guys are making, I think it's just like I think the reason there isn't as much crossplay is that Riot is giving themselves a cushion where they're saying, all right, we probably still don't logistically know how we're going to make this work. Knowing Riot, they
Yeah.
probably don't
Yeah,
have
could be.
the most solid state plan for how this is going to work. So they're like, all right, at the very least, we're gonna keep it as small as we can for the first run because we got to make sure that we get the logistics down. Because if we don't have the logistics down, this turns into a nightmare. You then have competitive integrity issues, like with how actually competitive the games can be if they're not planning really precisely around how they're going to get these teams that are literally a world away from each other to play. Because like
Mhm.
TDS mentioned, this would be the equivalent of like if the South Brazil playing a North American team in LoL is the equivalent of like the South African national team traveling up to Wembley to go play the English national team. Like that's how much of a geographic jump it is for them for
Yeah.
more reference. I do want to kind of change the flip side because I know a lot of the conversation is about CBLOL and LLA being brought in. I do want to quickly, kind of change it to the North American part because I think, and
Mhm.
this is where I'm a little scared, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping optimistically that North America, the way we'll absorb this is one, what Quax you already said is that we're getting rid of the cannon fodder teams, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit.
Hopefully.
Hopefully getting rid
Hopefully.
of the cannon fodder teams. But
And before
secondly,
Cloud9 goes away.
oh my God,
Yeah. Oh my God.
North
I
America
would.
would set on fire. Um,
Yeah.
but secondly, and I'm hoping, I pray to God if this does not happen, this better light a fire under every North American team. Do you know how badly we're about to get flamed if we lose to these teams? Like if you
Yeah.
if you pretend like they're pushovers and they're not going to try and wallop you, they're gonna lose, and I'm scared of it
Yeah.
because CBLOL and LLA, they now all they want to do is beat North America. All they want to do,
Yeah.
all the CBLOL fans want to do is beat LCS teams. And if we don't prepare and show up as the top dog that we've been in the history of America's League of Legends competition internationally, this is going to become so rough for us, really bad.
Yep.
So this better light a fire under every 6 LCS teams that there is in this America's thing. For sure.
I feel like we got to play a national anthem after the way you were talking about the LCS, because yeah, I mean, agree, but I agree. I think that obviously if we treat CBLOL and LLA like they are fodder, then we're going to get punished, right? And I do think that the LLA and the CBLOL, with this news in mind, they're going to build as many super rosters as they can, right? Like they're going to take their best players and they're going to condense them all together and try to make a team. And I do think that if we go into it lax, then we are going to get a reality check. And I personally hope that doesn't happen because North America is no stranger to reality checks, especially in, international titles. Not only do we, talk about, excluding China and Korea and the fact that every single time we go against them, we lose. We've lost to minor region teams before, right? We lost to DFM. I believe it was in 2021 MSI, and that went on for 2 weeks. That flame, that insane, oh my god, our region sucks so bad mentality went on for so long, and I still remember it because the feedback and the aftermath of that loss, of that defeat, of almost getting knocked out by Japan of all regions was just insane. So I'm hopeful that the teams that stay, which are most likely going to be the well-established orgs, TL, Flyquest, E9, they'll recognize that very quickly and won't let that happen. But it is always a possibility.
Well, anyway, so the most important thing here is that the promotion slot now exists.
Yes.
And
For
yes,
us,
it's
yes.
only one slot, and it would be cool if it were more, yada, yada, yada. The difference between 0 and 1 is tremendous.
Infinite.
It's
literally
infinite. It's
from a
infinite.
mathematical
It's
standpoint.
so big. People, I mean, people are going to try to poo-poo it. Aspirants not being bound to the mercy of LCS franchises to get their shot at playing in the Pro League is just exactly what this scene needed. The ability for the best players to promote, in my opinion, has always been the biggest problem with NACL.
Mhm.
Bigger than wages, bigger than schedule, whatever you want to call it, bigger than ping, is that you could be the best player in Tier 2, and it's been like this since 2017. It's been like this for the better part of a decade now. Is that you could be the best player in Tier 2, and it does not guarantee you a shot at the Pro League, and you can't do shit about it. You gotta just hope that somebody notices and gives you a chance. And that's been ridiculous, and it's cost us several very talented players, and we don't have to deal with it anymore, at least not in whole, right? At least there's an opportunity to make it into the professional league and to show what you got. And that will itself, the big concern everybody has is oh, it's only one slot. What happens if it's a really good team and then they go to Worlds and they, and then they get relegated anyway because they have a bad series? And it's well, if that team of 5 players spends a whole year proving that they're better than the majority of the league, I'm not so doomer on the permanent franchises to think that that those players will not get opportunities after a full year of being good, even if the team that they're on does end up getting re-relegated. So,
Sure.
yeah, I think having that promotion slot is just absolutely tremendous. It will go to NACL teams. It will revitalize the whole NACL economy, I'm pretty sure, as well. We're going to get more investment into Tier 2 as people try to promote. In fact, I think that could almost be a double-edged sword. I've seen some concerns already that it's well, we might start overspending again for silly reasons and hurting.
What? Overspending? Nah.
North America overspending?
No. No way.
Right. Go ahead,
My
Quax.
big question is okay, so if we go for a hypothetical scenario here where let's say Flyquest Challengers are the team that promotes next year, right? And they go into the North Americas conference. And what happens to the name? Do we have Flyquest Challengers and then Flyquest? I feel like that could be an interesting kind of dilemma for some of the teams that are staying into the LCS. Are we going to be making academy teams? Because they could, in theory, make money from doing that, right? Because if they build a roster that is under their banner and then it promotes, they then have 2 teams that are just crushing it.
The full Ouroboros, if that happens, Quax, the full Ouroboros completes and the cycle ends where Fly Challengers promotes and they sell their spot to Cloud9, and it all comes back around. Flyquest originally bought into the league buying the Cloud9 Academy team that
I'm only
promoted.
for that timeline, actually.
That's what I was gonna say. So Flyquest, I was trying to remember all the old teams was
Flyquest
was
and Gravity were the big ones.
What was Gravity before?
Team
Were they
Liquid
a Curse
Academy?
No.
Team Liquid Academy.
Yeah, they were
Team,
Curse
yeah,
Academy.
Yeah. They were Team Liquid Academy. Yeah, so I'm
We'll
fine
just
with
go
that.
full
I mean,
circle.
I think we've all said it multiple. Well, maybe not Quax because he's newer around here. But I'm pretty sure Gordo, TDS, and I have at points said on this podcast that we are pro relegation. Oh, I know TDS has certainly said it.
I am very pro
Promotion
relegation
and
myself.
relegation. So, how many times have I heard the TDS promo relegation speech, which I love, by the way, TDS, but I've heard it like 4
I
times
mean,
since I've been on this podcast.
if we had relegation or promotion relegation from the start, then no one would even know that Immortals like existed at this point in time, because I mean that's just what franchising does, right? And that's what franchising has done to the LCS, and the fact that we just see the same teams kind of get knocked down over and over and over again, and very rarely do we see them actually put up a fight. And I feel like that could also kind of be the same for CBLOL, right? It's kind of just loud. It's the Red Canids. It's all of these like 3 teams, these 3 same teams that consistently rotate, spots 1 through 4. Maybe a team makes an upset here and there, but it kind of feels like that's what every region is, right? Even if you look at regions like Korea, everyone calls them a 2-team region at the moment with T1 and Gen G. No one really, obviously, the other teams have like their stars and players and content, but in terms of competitiveness, it really feels like every region has, a handful of teams, and then the rest can maybe pull up a split or 2 of surprises, but that's about it. So at the end of the day, I think it is, people are just upset that they're downsizing, but it will, in my opinion, make it better, because I do think that competition has always been, sized down to a handful of teams, even when we had so many teams in LCS, even, for instance.
But that's an important thing of every league. I hate I love the point that Quax is bringing, because I hate people that bring that up to try and make a league be valued less than it is. Because in reality, there's never any sport that you can consider important that doesn't have one team that is always up there. You have to have those consistent teams, because they first and foremost build the legacy of a lot of what your sport is about. Second and foremost, they are one of the reasons that other teams try to get to that point. And third and foremost, they are one of the biggest fan bases, because with winning comes fan bases. So you have to build upon those teams winning. And if a team is a 1 region team, it's not that bad. That's actually good. That means that there's one team that teams can aspire to try and beat it, and then play around that. And now it's building upon trying to get to be a 2-team region or a 3-team region. It's not easy, but it's something that happens everywhere. I'm obviously not the biggest or most versed in a lot of the sports, but for a while that was the Patriots in NFL. They were the most,
because of Tom Brady, right?
Teams, to a certain degree. But not only that, they were one of the most consistent teams to get into playoffs, as far as I know, right?
So at the very least, TDS NFL references. Let's
go. That's great.
I was trying to get something else, because I obviously have my football references, but I was trying to think of something else. For example, on NBA, I would say something like, I'm not a big basketball watcher, but I would say the Guardians for a while. The Golden Guardians.
Okay,
they made consistent in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Golden State Warriors, but yes,
but it's the same. It's the right deal. Take those.
I mean, weren't the Golden Guardians owned by the Golden State Warriors?
Yes.
So technically,
yeah.
It's right. That's why I'm saying it's right.
It's right.
And then the moment the Golden State Warriors did bad, we lost the Golden Guardians, because they had to cut costs because they didn't consistently win that year. So
yeah. Unlucky.
All right.
But yeah, that's the thing. You have to build on that.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. We spent a half hour on this. We were all so eager to talk about it. This is the punishment of recording on a day. Why couldn't this have dropped tomorrow? Then we could have had like a normal preseason episode, and we could have geared up for episode 2 to be about this. Let's get into some quick NACL changes and news. Should probably zip through this a little bit faster. I don't know. We might spend a little bit of time on Full Fearless. And then we'll get into our team power rankings. So, first things first, I'm just going to go through this in the order that they talked about these in the summer primer that the NACL dropped. First one is North American Celebrity League. New sponsors coming in for the teams. Fear is now Fear X Starforge. Maryville University is now DragonSteel. They're partnered with some fantasy author. I'm sorry, I don't read books.
I forgot his name.
I'm a proud American. I don't read books. No, I don't. I don't know why I said that. I would read a book occasionally, but I don't know. I'm not up to date on my fantasy novella stuff. So I have no idea who this guy is, but apparently he's some big shot around these parts. And yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to have more sponsors, more name sponsors coming on into the league. It seems like Riot kind of brokered these deals, which begs some questions from me. Like, what happens if these teams relegate? Like, what determines who gets which team? Like, if 4 more people come in and are interested, or is like, is one of them going to get AOE? Like, what does this mean?
Do they transfer if the team gets relegated?
That's what I'm
actually?
curious
Like,
about,
for-
right?
Yeah,
Like, what happens
yeah,
if
that would be
DragonSteel
interesting.
gets relegated? Is this fantasy author? I wish one of us knew his name. I was really counting on one of you guys to know his name.
Yeah, I don't.
It's okay. The point being, if DragonSteel relegates, will Maryville University continue to play in OQs as DragonSteel? Will a new team become DragonSteel? Like, that's like a
Yeah.
weird question that's kind of open, given that these seem to be like Riot brokered deals rather than like organically obtained sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
I-
Any other thoughts on that stuff? Overall, I think it's a net good. Especially, like, it almost
Yeah.
feels like it's a tiny little, like, a week ago, I would have been like, oh, this is awesome. This is going to help the NACL be more sustainable. But now I'm like, fuck it, guys. We got a promotion spot. That's where all the money's coming from. I don't care about fucking DragonSteel.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I thought Starforge.
I was about to say, I think Starforge is kind of a big one. I think overall, though, having more like named brands that are more involved in the scene as a whole is really good, because we've seen the effects of like famous people delving into League esports before and it paying off, even with like Disguised being a team, right? It was run by a content creator. Disguised Toast is an incredibly famous guy. And that team has a lot of fans simply because Toast has a lot of fans. And so him being able to kind of transfer that around is a commodity for the LCS. So I don't know if it's going to be as big with Brandon Sanderson, who is the fantasy author. I just looked it up.
There we go.
Or Fear's sponsor, but it can't hurt at the end of the day, right? Like to me, my mentality is that it can't hurt us, it can help us. How much it helps us remains to be seen, but can kind of we get what we can get at this point. I think is something to consider.
My serious answer is, I love it. This is good. My meme answer is, this plays directly into North America. Capitalism wins. Sponsor every single team with a brand.
all right.
It's
I mean,
capitalism. Play the
at
national
least
anthem
the names-
again.
At least the names are cool, right? At least we have a
Yeah,
team
I
called
like the name and the
DragonSteel.
icon.
Like, if I'm a caster and I'm going to NACL, I would much rather call them DragonSteel than Maryville University. It just rolls off the tongue better. I like it more.
I will say I don't like FXS as an abbreviation. Fear was much better.
You win some, you lose
Yes,
some.
Fear was kind of baller. I would say Worth, though. DragonSteel sounds like something not even out of like a fantasy. That sounds like fantasy science fiction. That's right on my alley. So
Reminds me of TDK, Team Dragon Knights.
Yeah.
When
Mhm.
they did promote to LCS
Yeah.
good old days.
You
as
gotta
well.
figure out a better abbreviation for that one too, though. DSTL is not something you
You
can
could just
say
do
on cast.
Steel.
Yeah.
Steel, that's fun. That'd be
or
good.
DRG, like
I'm also
Dragon.
kind of curious because now this also opens up the door
too.
by the with the relegation promotion also
Mm.
to collegiate teams actually being part of the big leagues.
Yeah, that would be
'Cause-
very strange because it's like, how are you gonna take your collegiate team to go like live in LA?
Yeah.
So that might be
I-
tough.
that's
So-
a-
They might like have to
that's a
forfeit
weird
their
thing, but
spot
there's a
if they
chance for
get it.
that.
Well, so hang on. If Fear win, they're no longer Cincinnati. They're LA Fear, maybe
They'll
mixed with
still
their
be
sponsor.
called
That
Cincinnati Fear, I'm sure, but
They just
These
play,
are gonna
they
be
just play
growing
weekly
pains.
in LA.
yeah.
is it gonna be?
This is a growing pains example of all the changes. Like, that's just something if it happens, you adjust then. But like,
Yeah.
it does make for fun hypotheticals,
It
right? Like
does.
how
Mhm.
Yeah.
That would
Yeah.
be funny.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Full Fearless. So we are getting
Yes.
full Fearless format
Let's
this
go.
split. So first of all, I'm not going to get too into this rant, but the naming stuff around Fearless has been so bonkers to me. Like, it's so
It's just
crazy to
true.
me that, like, I don't understand how the whole community did this, like, overnight. But, like, Riot introduced a new format that they invented, right? Where You can't pick the same champion for the same team, right? And that's the format we've been playing with for like a year and a half now, between LDL and NACL. And they called it Fearless. And then at some point in like the last 6 months, everybody started thinking like, oh, you know what? It should just be like that for both teams, right? It should disable it for both teams. Yep. And then somehow they like warped it around in their mind, and they're like, that new format I made up in my mind, that's Fearless now. And Riot's format that they named Fearless and introduced as Fearless, that's only half Fearless. That's not real Fearless anymore.
Fearless.
That's so fucking bonkers. It's so weird to me. I guess now Riot's like bought into it. They're like, no, now it's you're right. That was half Fearless. Now it's full Fearless.
It should just be Fearless and True Fearless.
It should just have its own name. I'm gonna be real honest with you, but whatever.
True Fearless.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, a True Fearless doesn't roll off the tongue though. If they could put it to like one word, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
Exodia.
Exodia. I personally feel like Ultimate Bravery would sound really cool, but that's a whole other thing entirely. That's what I play in my solo queue games at midnight.
Why not call it like Bravery or something? Like that's you could just give it a totally distinct name, and then we wouldn't have to like be doing this stupid half full nonsense. But whatever. It's full Fearless. That's the name of the format. That's the format that we're going to be playing with. Both bans or picks. Champs once picked are banned for both sides for the rest of the series. In best of 5s, in round 4, you go to 3 bans. In round 5, you go to no bans. I think that's pretty much everything. Thoughts on this? I have thoughts, but I've talked for way too long.
So I will get mine out of the way quickly. I'll try to keep it simple, but I am in fact a certified yapper. So I was scared of full Fearless. I think full blown Fearless for best of 5 scared me with how it would be for. Sorry, Gordo. Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm just like thinking of puns right now. I'm not gonna do it.
Okay,
Scared of Fearless.
Ha 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 ha.
This is
why I'm a yapper, because Gordo derails me.
Sorry.
I was cautious about full Fearless because I thought it would degrade competitive integrity. I think NACL did a great job with those changes to games 4 and 5 that you mentioned, Gordo, and that got me fully on board.
Yeah. I mean, there would be so many champions that would not be allowed if we kept, the regular 10 bans. Like that would devolve into people picking like insane stuff, in my opinion. And at some point, you have to kind of draw the line between like competitively viable picks and competitively viable comps, and then like something that looks more akin to solo queue, right? And while the chaos of Fearless is really fun to watch, I feel like there's only so far you can go. So I agree. I really like the changes that they made for games 4 and 5. I also do think that, my kind of question to you guys is, do you guys think Fearless being implemented will change the power rankings that we'll talk about later? Do you think Fearless will play a key factor into the rankings of the teams and how well they'll do? Because obviously draft is a really big thing, but is it that big?
It will for me. It did impact my rankings.
I'm considering it for there are certain players where I'm worried about it more than others. Yeah. So it's
The problem for me is that, I'll put out first of all my thoughts on Fearless. I like it. I would love to see full Fearless, and that means no bans at all, or like bans all the way through to the 5 games. But Plus, I do think that there's more chances to actually make this work out, even if we have to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the champ pool. Because at the end of the day, there is 162 champs, or 164, I think, by now. So
yeah,
something like that.
There is quite a good amount of champions. That being said, I do think that there's obviously always nuances. Things like how well can you set it up for a strategy? How does the enemy team respond? There's a lot of nuances to consider. So I feel like that's pretty difficult to make it work now. When we reach 200 champions, maybe that changes, because now there's going to be even more. So, of course, there's more chances for it to actually go even deeper into the champion pool. But as of now, maybe not the case. I think that for how teams play, this is going to change certain things. I don't think it's going to change that much, though, because at the end of the day, it is effective when you look at BO5s, but regular season is still going to be BO3s. And that makes it so that regular season is not going to be that different unless there's a huge drop off in certain players. I think that that's going to stay pretty stable. The biggest difference is always going to come when we go all the way, because that's in the ongoing series. Even in game 4, you're going to still have at the very least 3 bans. So that's still going to force people into going deeper into their pools until game 5, where anything goes. And I wish it was blind pick once again, the blind pick Korea game 5 kind of thing. That was great. I hope that they
That was
bring it
wild.
sometime in the future. That was beautiful. But apart from that, I don't think that it's going to impact much of my rankings in regular season at the very least, just because it's BO3.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about cautionless draft. That first of all, like, I was kind of a naysayer on Fearless when it was first introduced, and I'm gonna be honest, after a split of NACL and a split of ACL and a split of RCL and everything covering it and a split of NACL Qs, like, it's like second nature to me now. I actually like it just feel like watching non-Fearless series, it like feels like they should be Fearless. So
Yeah,
I've
was weird.
yeah,
CeeLo was weird. for
yeah,
sure.
I've been very Fearless pilled, I suppose. Yeah, like I think it's just worked out a lot better than I would have originally expected it, despite the fact that I was originally pretty skeptical. In this new format, a little worried about blue side advantage, especially in like game 5. But overall, I think this will be an interesting direction. Here's the thing, like, learning about the ban changes in games 4 and 5 kind of like inspired me a little bit. First of all, I think that's an absolutely like genius idea. Like, I think the reduction in bans as the series goes on is very, very smart. I almost wish we like leaned further in that direction of like, instead of banning picks after they're made, if we just upped the amount of bans and took them away as the series went on. Like, I think that kind of, because I would really like to kind of invert the normal wacky spectrum. Like, I think that would be the best way to do it, right? Because as the
Every
series
producer
starts,
is so mad at you saying this. By the
What?
way,
Yeah.
every graphic designer and producer.
I know,
is so
I know,
mad
I
at this
know, I know.
concept.
Yeah,
It's
that-
listen. There's
What
a
it-
little bit of overhead, okay? Especially if you're gonna come in with like 20 bands a team. There's a little bit of overhead to be done here. Don't
Confused because I thought you were saying to like it was the longer the series went, like you added one more ban.
No,
It's
you
what I
start
thought.
with more bands, and then you get more
Okay.
normal as the series
You
goes
just
on. Because it's like
gradually,
then,
yeah.
as the series starts, and it's at its most boring, and it has the lowest stakes, and is potentially the most one-sided, that's where you get your wacky picks. And then as the
Mhm.
series heats up and the stakes rise, you reintroduce more comfortable, more powerful picks.
Okay.
And get more standard games with champions people are more experienced on as the matches get the most intense and matter the most. I think that would be interesting, because I think the weakest part of the Fearless format is that as the series heats up and gets more intense, people are playing picks they are less comfortable on, and that's why I really like the ban reductions in games 4 and 5, because at least you get like this injection of powerful meta picks in the deep end of the series, instead of it just being like a full fiesta.
Another way, maybe, because I was thinking, I got your idea wrong, but it made me think you could also make it so that you start with 5 bans, and each game you lose 1 ban. So you just go down 1 ban each game for both sides, and then you just open up each time a champion that maybe gets taken away by Fearless, but maybe it's not that like big huge swing in terms of bans that you get, but you lose 1 ban each time, and that way you can open up or free up one of those champions that way.
Or do like
Was what I was thinking you were mentioning.
Yeah, or do like 20 bans and reduce by 4 every time, right? And it's like
I can hear all of our producers.
our
Oh my
producers would be
God.
miserable, but okay, like
I am willing to make the sacrifice of trading the meta integrity of a series for the stylistic and personality that you can bring to games 4 and 5 as a player. That's what I'll just say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, like, obviously, let's just bring up a player as an example, right? Like, Samakin is a Zoe OTP, and I feel like, you know, you could throw in Samakin, you could throw in Yozu. These players are specialists on certain champions, right? And I do feel like that could be a branding opportunity for these players in the future, and I feel like Fearless would help kind of shine that through, or help chisel that kind of quality through more. Like, even looking at older players, like Froggen was famous for Anivia, right? Anytime he got to play it, game over, GG, well played, enjoy your flight home. I feel like kind of letting that quality shine for some players does help out a lot, but it can't be the only thing, right? Like, if you're a one trick, you have to be able to adapt. And I think that will also show. So I think that it kind of does help both sides of the coin for players that are proficient on champions, that have kind of built this persona around their champions, whose champions give them aura, if you will, and just allow them to sort of drive home with it if it's successful.
I also like the fact that it can accentuate the way that you want to play with certain players, particularly because since it's going to be full fearless, both teams cannot play one thing. You have to begin thinking about which champion are you valuing for that particular game, right? Like, let's say your player can play Azir Talia, but you're more than likely sure that the enemy team is going to play Azir Talia as well. So which champion do you actually value now, and which are you willing to throw away from the two of them? Because one is going to get the other, and then you discard either of those. Or I like Talia more as well, but that's another argument. And then you have Jinx, for example, in the current meta. You can play it once, and then you also deny it for at the very least 3 games to the enemy team. So, like, those mind games that also begin happening in series can be really fun. Also, strategies. Who do you value more, your top lane or your bot lane? Which champion do you wish to put pressure on more, your top lane, bot lane, mid lane? Those things are going to begin shining more, and I think that can create more strategy-based pick ban phases, particularly on the idea of what you want to get and what you want to deny at the end of the day.
Yeah. For the record, the fearless bans stay in Game 5. It's the regular draft bans that drop out for Game number 5. So that's interesting for sure. That'll give you like a couple of meta picks that have probably been banned the whole series long.
Also, super broken champions, right?
Yes.
Because if there's one super broken champion that is banned all series long, for Game 5 is going to be open.
Yep.
I also do, before we go into money matches, this is a super quick point. I do think Fearless, obviously it's going to be, obviously people are talking about it being more common in other regions and other mediums other than the NACL. I think that'll really help Riot's balance around pro play. Now that we're seeing all of these picks being played more often, I feel like their view on, how do we balance for pro play is going to dramatically shift, right? Because obviously Azir can be really broken. Like, let's say, he's always broken in competitive. Azir is really broken in competitive, but they can only play him for 1 game. So the moment he's picked, he's out of the picture, right? So unless a champion is so broken that it is literally a free win if this certain team picks it, I don't really see them, needing to balance around pro play nearly as hard as they once were. Obviously, if picks are broken, then you nerf them and vice versa. But I do think with the broken picks only being able to be played once by one team, it does mean that those are easier to pinpoint, easier to target, and they won't be as much of an issue in, say, 5-game series.
The only sad part is that we don't get the chance to spam the "This is Kisanta" meme as much as possible, just because it only can be played once.
True. No Showmaker copy pastas. No more Zoe copy pastas. They're all going away. That's disappointing.
No more Cadro predicting Dras with ease.
Mm-hmm.
True.
They're gonna be pulling out Nefari's left and right. He's gonna be like, "Where did that come from?"
Wait, yeah, actually, my analytical value just went really bigly down the drain because now I cannot predict the drafts.
I mean, it'll allow color casters like us, TDS, I think, to predict more wild picks, right? That could be played. We'll have to like go LS levels and be like, they can go Darius here, but Darius is never picked by anyone more than Adam. But it might make sense. So I think that'll be kind of a fun little matching.
We have to be even more five
Speak
now.
for yourselves,
You
guys.
have to
I was nailing
even
some
more.
fearless picks on Risen Champs last
Yeah,
night.
I've
Quax and
nailed
Slayer,
some.
you guys weren't there, but I was nailing some draft picks last night.
All right.
Fair enough.
Anyway, money matches. Yeah, so there's a couple of weeks of split now that are designated as money matches. The players or the teams are competing for a prize. Cool idea. Kind of concerned that no one's mentioned a number a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it matters, man.
I don't know, because
The
if these are like for $500, does anyone fucking care?
It's not that little.
Are you sure?
Why
won't they say a number
I
then?
would guarantee at least 4 figures.
Okay, if it's if I think it needs to be, and then
It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be at least $2.5 grand.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean that would be
Okay,
$500 a player. That would be good. And each team starts out with 2.5k gold, so maybe that could be a little bit of a meme.
And we could here's the thing, Gordo. Sorry, Quax, to cut you off. If I'm
You're good.
wrong, easy impressions. Just post me on the Salt Mine podcast, and we flame me.
You know what? We've
and then we
turned
get
this into
impressions.
a dub. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think money matches are kind of cool. Incentives for teams. Like obviously being able to give your team an extra little boost in revenue never hurts anybody. I will be the first to say I am a little bit concerned about engagement for these money matches. I think money matches are really cool, and I think the money for the teams winning is really cool. As a viewer, though, money for teams that I'm not directly a part of isn't really something I would say is a commodity when you're trying to get people to watch. Like, obviously, money matches are going to help the teams themselves. I don't know if it's going to help fan engagement, though. I don't know if it's going to help, people be like, eh.
It's weird to describe, but I do it's like weirdly less impactful when it's like a team of 5 dudes than it is like when it's 2 dudes in like FGC playing for money, like putting their money on the table. I think that's like that adds like a level of hype for sure. It feels different when it's like teams though.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was kind of thinking like money matches could have been like an external thing outside of the season. Like we would do fun little things with just the game in general, and a team could earn money via that, or they could let a player shine. I feel like money matches as teams isn't going to be as interesting as stuff they could do for entertainment value, and the fact that money matches are supposed to be more on the fun end. Yeah. And if they're going to play into that fun, I think they need to delve more into it. I think they need to dive a little bit more into it and make it kind of more content focused instead of something on the standings. But I do think that this is a compromise, but I do feel like it kind of comes up short on both ends, in my mind at least.
I think Quax, you're going to be. That's a good point, but I think if there's anybody that I trust to make sure to get content out of these money matches, it's like money matches is it sounds like a WWE thing. So Deathstroke's about to go crazy. Kang's about to go crazy with it for the NACL broadcast team, and then some of these amazing content people for some of these orgs are going to find very fun ways. Like I guarantee you, somebody is going to film a picture of the MVP of the money match holding a briefcase with dollar signs on it, like shaking it or something. There's going to be a briefcase involved. It's going to be cool. It's gonna be like
I hope Chad wins with his hat. See it? I could see it. I can see it right now.
Yeah,
that would be infinite meme potential.
Everyone planning for the money matches already. Even betters.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Oh, even yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh boy.
NACL money match gambling.
NACL money match gambling. All right.
Mhm.
Is it time?
YouTube channel. The NACL is
Oh,
YouTube
yeah.
channel now.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Should have been the case a long time ago.
Yes.
Now actually be timely. Actually be timely with the uploads now, please.
Please.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And then there is a new playoffs format. The whole lower bracket is best of 5s, which is based. The 7th and 8th seeds start in the lower bracket. Sure. Overall, I think good changes. More best of 5s equals good. I'm not too. I don't find that too interesting of a subject, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just ready to talk about the power rankings.
I'm ready to talk about the power rankings too. We're about 55 minutes in. Let's go, boys. Right. Let's see if we can.
Thank you to anybody that made it this far.
Let's see if we can hammer these out. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are probably skipping to right now. That's going to be the timestamp that I'm going to put in. We're going to talk about the power rankings now. So we're going to go classic Salt Mine rules. I'm going to go through the teams alphabetically. We are going to all give where we have that team ranked, and then the highest rated and lowest rated individuals will represent the team and duke it out a little bit here. And the rest of us will share our thoughts as appropriate. And then I'll be keeping track of all of them in the background, and we'll condense them down to a official Salt Mine Power Rankings at the end of the day. So, to kick things off, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to make the same mistake I've made in previous splits. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to read off the rosters every time. Please note, some of these rosters have not been officially announced. We'll call these educated guesses. As well as some whisperings around the scene.
No insider trading. We are educatively guessing.
Well, yeah, these are hypothetical rosters.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. I mean, yeah, like listen. And this is dropping Friday morning, the day before NACL starts, so fucking hopefully some of these teams will have announced rosters by then.
And if we're very wrong, it's fine. We just were taking guesses.
If we're wrong, I mean, we were wrong about Maryville last
guesses.
split.
We have the excuse.
So
We were so wrong about Maryville last year.
They had the wrong roster for that long. It's not
I
our fault.
take absolutely no blame about anything that happened with that Maryville roster. I blame only the management from Maryville for dropping that roster 3 days before NACL. I would have never guessed them as 10.
All right. Anyway, let's kick things off. We will start with AOE Esports. These guys just announced today, so no hypotheticals here. This team is Moose Hater, NXI, Cupic, Wixie, and Breezy from top to bottom. I have this team 10th.
Yep, me too.
Yep, I got him 10.
Quax got him 10th. TDS? For the sweep?
He doesn't. You could tell.
Yeah, I think it's between 10th and 9th. The thing is that if this is
What are you
their
giving
roster, if this is their roster and this is the other roster that I think could be 10th, I think this is 9.
All right. I'm giving you
9th?
9th, TDS. We don't have the 10th place sweep this time around. TDS, you're the highest. You're the only one out of consensus. Talk us up on AOE Esports.
Yeah, gas us up on these guys.
So here's the thing. I have absolutely no hope for AOE. Just
bad start.
And
bad start.
there.
I'm not gonna lie.
The thing is,
I mean, this is TDS though. I mean, this is
so there's two things that bring me hope for this team that can make a difference. One is they have Roseturn as sub, so maybe they can bring him in instead of NXI, and if that's the case, I can see them picking up more victories because they have Wixie, Moosehater, and Roseturn. I can see those 3 players stepping up. I don't think they're going to go over 9, but I've doubted some of these players before, but I think they're capable. Particularly, I still think Wixie is one of the better AD carries, even though he briefly retired. I'm still waiting for him to return my sad tweet about him retiring, so I hope that there's some sort of compensation in the form of him performing in the NECL in some good way. But apart from that, I think that they are a 9th place team. The thing is that the other roster that I think is on par with them, I think it's going to be worse. So just wait for it.
I mean, the one advantage I can see this team maybe being able to pull out is obviously I agree with you, TDS. I think Wixie has a lot of potential as a player. I'm excited to see him back. I know that he bamboozled us with his retirement, but I am happy to see him back. The one big thing that I can see this team really being able to maybe pull out against others, even though I think other teams do this better, is the fact that you have Moosehater and Cupic as your solo laners. Now, while I do think, their talent can be called into question, especially against, I would say, a very, very stacked split of solo laners on other teams, I do think that Fearless draft in general favors players like these who have a lot of preferential picks. Cupic has a lot. Cupic, I don't, man, whatever. Has a lot of preference. Moosehater has pulled out insane stuff in the past. So while they do have these picks in mind, I don't know if it's really going to make a dent in their standings. It might throw some teams for a loop, and it might, put them on their back foot, saying, "Oh, we didn't expect that." But the execution of it, I can't really see being, greater than most of these other teams. At the end of the day, I just think it comes down to they aren't as skilled in most of their positions as some of these other squads.
Yeah. I mean, I've been really high on Wixie for a while as well. I was really high on Wixie last split. I put him on my All Pro teams somewhere. I think it was second, maybe it was third, probably third. Now that I think about
It
it,
was third.
it was surely
It was
third.
definitely not second.
I mean, I know I didn't have
There's-
Sajet in there, but
There's no way you put him over.
I didn't put him over
Wait,
Scary
why-
Jerry.
And wait, why am I blank? There's definitely one that we all also had.
Right?
No, maybe not. Maybe you did put him second. I don't
Maybe I
know.
did
What,
put
not
him
the
second.
point.
Hang
Not the
on,
point.
I don't have. Oh wait, I do have him in here. Yeah, I did. I had him second. I had him second
Yeah,
because I
okay.
left off Sajet. Everybody else had Sajet.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a hater. Yeah, I mean, so as much as of a lover as I am for Wixie, he did just retire due to a lack of motivation a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago, and now he's back. That just can't inspire confidence, man. I'm sorry, Wixie, yeah, man. Listen, I'm sorry.
I will
All right,
say-
I'm sorry, Wixie's dad, if he's tuned in as well, but.
Yeah,
It's just
man,
hard to
you-
like have a lot of confidence when you just told us you didn't have the heart for it anymore like 3 weeks ago.
But
Uh,
look at
I
it this
will
way,
say-
now there should be more motivation since there's relegation promotion. So he actually
sure,
can go
maybe,
pro.
I will say,
With
Wixie's
that.
dad, if you are tuning in, it's
Paul.
not that we don't believe in Wixie. We want to believe in Wixie. I want to believe in Wixie personally because I think he's a super cool dude. I think he's a pretty good player. But this is the power rankings,
Yeah,
so
sorry, Paul.
someone has to be.
guy-
Someone has to be last. And
guy
I
on the block,
apologize.
and it's not just Wixie either, right? So like Cupic and NXI. I mean, Cupic has to come in as my 10th place player in his role, right? How can he not?
Yeah.
Cupic's never played a competitive game of mid lane, to my knowledge. He played in OQs a little bit as bot and support, has not done so as mid lane before. And then like NXI, I mean, is reroll swapping back to jungle. For those who don't know, like the NXI history, he was on Fly Academy once upon a time and was pretty good there. Since then, things have gone pretty downhill. He did pretty poorly on CLG Faith. Roll swap to support on Team Fish Taco. Did pretty poorly over there. I mean, I think your big hope for AoE is that this is kind of a power of friendship team. Like, these guys wanted to play together.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like an accident that, like, NXI out of the top rope, out of nowhere with a steel chair, and, like, Cupic having not even, like, made a promotion tournament before or ever played an NACL before, and, like, Moose Hater back from pseudo-retirement are, like, all coming back together. Like, this is not demos, like, smoking crack here. These guys wanted to play together. They, like, kind of, this is, like, a player-formed team, basically, to my knowledge. And you just got to have faith in that. Although the last team that I remember hearing that description for was that Team Fish Taco team that ended dead last. So best of luck to AoE, but yeah, really hard for me to not put them 10th.
I can't see this roster being fun though. Like even if we are predicting them to be 10th, I can see this squad being just like what chaotic evil in a way, where they just go all out with some of these picks and just go absolutely buck ass wild. And honestly, if you're a 10th place team, the best way I think you can invest people in your gameplay is if it is just insane, if it is just crazy. Because even though, this is going to be my brief Mirage Alliance talk, MA, even though they finished dead last, they always had scooped in the chat, hate chatting in Twitch, and that in and of itself was, some people enjoyed watching that, some people thought that was fun. So I think if AoE can be fun, then I will still enjoy watching them even if they don't play super highly. And I think they have the players to make a fun squad, especially with Gordo. Like you said, they want to play together, so it is kind of a power of friendship, more laid back, chill vibe, I think. And if they lean into that, I think it could be entertaining, at least to watch their matches.
I'm gonna keep this one a stack here since this is the first one, and we all nearly consensusly agreed to keep this thing. Keep it rolling. I agree with all the points about the bot side would have been the best part. Wixie Breezy, statistically probably better than most people expected. Don't know where the motivation is there. Power friendship teams haven't played too well, And I also, the one thing I'll add is I just don't think this was AoE's roster plan for a lot of the offseason. I think they probably got dealt a lot of bad cards, and this is what they landed on. So I'm ready to get clipped and be flamed and be wrong.
Not to get too into off-season rumors, but as I assume is true for a lot of you guys, I was hearing a different name in mid lane for a long time this offseason.
Yep.
So that's a bit strange. Also, like, I mean, pour one out for last split's AoE roster, by the way. Like, I was real hyped for that team, and now, like, Zumudo, Rosethorn, Onat all appear to be out of the league. That's a shame. I liked all the players on that team, and
I doubted that team, to be honest.
It's a shame that it didn't work out.
Yeah. I mean,
They were
Onat in
one game
particular.
away from going upwards.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, yeah, they were like one win away from actually making a deeper playoff run too, and having a huge upset. So that's a shame, but it is what it is. That's competition, baby. All right, let's move on to our second team here. We got Blue Otter, newcomers, newly promoted team. This team is
new kids on the block.
Yeah, shout out to Bully here, close representative
class champions
of North American
Bully.
Amateur. Yeah, former teammate of Slayer and mine.
My support.
Yeah, love that guy. So Blue Otter, Quacker, Music, Samakin, Levitate, and Rovex will be this team from top to bottom. I have this team 9th.
I have them 8th.
I have them 8th.
Interesting. I think they are a solid 6th to 7th team.
Oh, you gotta pick one, man.
Whoa.
What do you have, 6th to 7th?
We do have to nail down numbers here, TDS.
So yeah, is that I think they can be a solid 6 to 10. The problem is that I hate the fact that since we're doing this alphabetically, I can completely go against it in the later stages. But I think I'll say 7th. I feel like
I was gonna say you're a nut job if you have these guys top 6. So I'll
they
give
are
you
they are
7th.
at the very least qualifying. Yeah, they are qualifying at the very least.
I'm gonna have you quarantined if you have the top 6, my man. So we could do 7.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
I mean,
TDS, you're the highest. You want to kick us off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hit us again.
Wait one moment. Yeah, no, they are 17.
He was trying to calculate if they're actually 17.
Yeah, I was actually watching out
by.
because I was thinking maybe they are actually an 8th, but no, they are 7th. I have another 8th.
Okay.
So the thing with me with Blue Otter is that I think they have talent that has not only played already in the NACL to have a good enough experience in both Quacker and Music, but they were also quite consistently, or at the very least, they were good talent in the NACL, even if they got relegated once or twice. Like, I think they were the much more promising parts of teams that got relegated. And also, I think that they have good talent to work around with. I think Samakin, Levitate, and Robex. I think Robex also played in the NACL already. Maybe I'm lacking out. So they have 3. Yeah, they have 3 players that have an NACL experience, and I think they have great upstarts in the form of Samakin and Levitate that can bring forward a lot of important value to them. And I want to bring up one of the points that we were talking about, which is Fearless. I think Samakin is one of the players that actually can be positive in Fearless, particularly in regular season. You have champions that you have kind of reprimand against him, but also he hasn't shy away from playing multiple different champions. So I think in a BO3 format, he can try and get more opportunities to play different champions. I don't think he's going to be one of the main liabilities, even though I don't think he's going to be the top mid lanes of this league. I think that he is a player that can defend himself in a really good manner, and it's going to be much more on what Quacker, Music, and Levitate can do to kind of put themselves ahead of the competition, in my eyes.
I will say that's a great, I think that is a great point that I didn't really think about too much when placing them here. I don't think it's enough to shift them up to 8th for me or anything, but I do think that Samakin Zoe is gonna be a pain in the ass in draft to deal with. Because it's
his Lux.
And his Lux, but especially to Zoe, because I think it's just on that threshold of it's a functional enough poke mage that you can play it in a competitive game and it's not embarrassing. But it's you don't really want to allocate a ban to it. but it's like it's so playable that like he will slam it up against. If you leave it up, he'll pick it and he'll probably beat you on it. So like
Yeah.
it's
And
a
the
very
champions around
interesting
him are
problem.
strong.
Like it's like a lot of the times, you know, you have players come in and it's like they're Riven players are the big ones, right? Like it's like you have
Yeah.
Sniper, he's the
Yeah.
big
Viper.
Riven guy, or his brother Viper before him, or anything like that. And it's or Broken Blade, right? And it's like Riven is not really a champion you can just like slam in your first rotation and play just because it's left
Yeah.
up, even if you are a Riven one trick. Zoe kind of can. Like, it's not
Mhm.
that bad of a pick. So I think like they're like Samikin's like right in that sweet spot where like his one trick is playable in comp, but like nobody is ready for it, and he's way better than anyone else on it. That like it is going to be really fucking tough to deal with playing against Blue Otter.
Gordo, I'm gonna use your own line against you. Not a good start to your 9th argument, buddy. So
Sorry,
why is the 9th?
Yeah, league's super competitive this split, man. So overall, Levitate for Lynx is sure, like, so to start off with, like, Blue Otter as a whole, happy for the squad to make it, excited for them to be here. It reminds me a lot of Lit from last split in that it's kind of a surprise they're here at all. And that is naturally going to, like, keep them towards the bottom. They come in with 2 changes, right? Levitate for Lynx, which I do think is a downgrade, as happy as I am for Levitate to be here and get his opportunity. And then Quacker for Lawrence, which is an upgrade, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a
I was
reunion
gonna
with
get angry.
music that I am excited for. I thought they were the best part of that Supernova team, like TDS
Yeah.
referenced earlier. But for the rest, like, Rovex has not really convinced me that he's an NACL level support in his play previously on Team Liquid First and in open qualifiers. And like, I'm gonna be low on Samikin coming in as a rookie mid. Like, it's tough to be a rookie mid coming into NACL. Especially now with all the like veterancy floating around there, like you're gonna have to play against the Youngs and the Shochis and the Blaze Olives and the Bradleys and the Roamers
yeah.
of the world. Like it's gonna be a lot harder, and it's just it's an adjustment period that I mean like is very sink or swim for a lot of these guys, and I don't really have a great justification for it. I'm just feeling Samikin is probably going to start out more on the messages side of things than the toasty side of things.
Yeah.
I would love to be
disagree.
proven wrong. I would love for Samikin to like really come in and surprise me and overperform, and I think he would need to for them to move much higher for me. But as we'll get into, like I think these other teams are actually quite good.
I do think that Blue Water is there's definitely a lot of like what ifs and coulds and maybes I think surrounding some of these newer players. Like I think Samikin can be really good, but it is just him being a rookie. And I think the same kind of can go for Levitate. Quacker, not super convinced on. We'll have to wait and see how the season starts. I like Quacker as a Quax myself. You know, I kind of got to stick with the Duck Bros, but it is definitely a question of how can he go up against some of these top laners, because I think top, aside from jungle, which is always the most stacked role, I would say, in North America, just in general, I think top might actually be the most stacked. Like, there are some really insane top laners in the NACL this split. My brief little note on Samikin is that a counter argument to Gordo's actually is that while the Samikin Zoe is very threatening, it's only it's a one-off, right? They can only play that card once because we're in Fearless, and so he can play that once. If it's taken away, they can't really use that card again. And while I do think his Lux, his way, his efficiency on poke mages is very, very good, I don't think it's as good as his Zoe. And like you said, I do think he's going to need to exceed expectations in order to be, you know, contending with some of those top mids. So it is definitely a tall order, I think, from Samikin and Music in particular. But I do think they have the ability to get higher than what we've placed them at the end of the day. I think this squad has potential.
Yeah, so I'm gonna make it sound like I put him higher than 8th with this, to be honest with you. I am willing to say that I think Samikin will finish, mostly by statistical metrics, probably around 5th or 6th best mid in the league.
I agree.
I think Samikin is in a scenario. One, I think I saw a discussion about this under funnily enough, the quad promotion post, but guys like Cubby and I believe actually maybe it wasn't Papa Smithy, but some notable people were talking about how outside of quad, the statistical level of play with mid laners was actually not great last year.
Because quad was so good.
Quad was so good,
just
yes.
Well, I mean, quad and
destroyed
roamer
everybody.
too. Roamer was also quite good, but yeah, I know the stat you're talking about. It's quad, roamer, and Spyrax were the only 3 mid laners last split with a positive XP difference at 15.
Yeah, that was one of the stats. So I'll use that as a bit of a crutch. I'm not the best stats guy, and I will recognize that there has been an injection of better mid laners alongside Samikin. You guys already mentioned them. I'm not going to talk too much about Blaze Olive because I'm going to save it for later, but that's a name. Bradley back to mid lane. He looked unstoppable in CCG, right? Yes. But I think Samikin with the Fearless system is in a perfect position. I think people sleep on his meta picks. I think his Hui and his Talia are very, very good. And I think they'll be prominently parts of his play style. I think he has the best jungle pairing that to put himself on that pedestal. And I know for a fact that he's been grinding a crazy amount against those mid lane players, yes, in solo queue. However, I think this guy is poised to have a toasty. This is my toasty. Samikin's going to be my toasty, like Gordo was last year. I think Samikin is not going to have a slump coming in here, and I expect him to be middle of the pack mid laners. I'm not about to say he's going to go smack around Bradley and Roamer. This is not going to happen. But I do think he's going to be enough of a catalyst in the damage department, which they're going to need him to be, because I agree with Gordo about the bot side for Blue Otter. That's why they're 8th, to get them out of relegation zone. I have faith. And then obviously, anybody that's listening to me for any point of the salt mine knows I'm going to cap for Quacker. And I will recognize that he's very hit or miss. He's going to int some games, but he also has the ability to beat any top laner in the league if he's on.
I do think he's an exciting piece of this too, because I think like when he was last with Music, I think he and Music were a great duo on Supernova, and that was like a time when Quacker, it felt like, was like really the like he needed his Olaf, right, at that time.
Yeah.
I think he's evolved a lot as a player since then. I think he's like his Cassante is real sick now. He's got some much better tank play. He's got some much better
he's got the Darius you can always go
to
too. Like
I think he's less reliant on like the Dariuses and Olafs of the world now than he was on Supernova. So I think that's something to be hopeful for.
I mean, he's the reason why Wildcard were able to finish where they were, because he had such a torrent start. I think we could all agree he was the best top laners, like through game score, through at least the first 2 weeks. He was one, like that run they went on was just him slamming people on Darius. And yes, I know it's the same debate, but
yeah,
he was at least like the top echelon top laners for the first couple of weeks in NACL. He has that in him. So, but so I'm willing to stand on my Samikin take. I do have concerns with the bot side. And that's why
I am going to,
but they will not be relegated.
I am tempted to be a dick about that and interrogate you more on this Samikin top.
Go ahead.
On this Samikin top 5, top 6 mid laner take, but we'll
like
as we
6
go through.
or 5. Like
sure,
is it that crazy?
We'll find out.
No,
we'll find out as we go through.
I agree.
Okay, and you agree. So all right, I'm gonna play this game with both of you as we go.
I make it exposed.
Makes sense.
Maybe. Let's go. All right. I'm gonna move on to CCG Esports. CCG Esports. This roster is we're pretty sure this is a team that hasn't announced yet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Crimson, Chad, Shochi, Manui, and Trevor from top to bottom. I have this team 8th.
I have this team 7th.
I have them 7th.
I have them 8th as well.
So I guess I could take this one.
Sure.
Go ahead. So for starters, I am while I do think that the squad had a lot of turbulence, kind of going into the NACL season. Obviously, this was by far the best OQ team that we had in the second qualifier, and probably even I would say the best team. I don't want to say by far, but by a significant margin that we had in the promotion tournament. Like, this felt like a squad that really impressed everybody and really just would destroy everyone they came into contact with. These roster changes, though, I feel like have taken away a lot of the pieces that made them, that big Goliath, right? They do not have Bradley. They do not have Yukino, right? And those, to me, were the two big titans. I think Crimson was really good when the team needed him to be. If Crimson keeps up the form that he had in OQs and form he had in the promotion tournament, I can see him being a force to be reckoned with. That said, I don't know about this bot side. I think Shochi is kind of a question mark. I think, and I know Slayer is going to have a lot to say about this player. I think Manui is also kind of, he's there. And I think that Trevor is kind of the most liquid support in the sense that he can be good if he has a good AD carry, but if he has a bad AD carry, then he's also not going to perform. So I do think he kind of reflects his AD carry's performance in his own performance. So I can see this squad with Crimson and Chad being the carries being good, but I do not think that it's going to be enough to put them in the upper echelon of teams whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll quickly go since I'm the other 7th guy, and I've ended the last couple. I mostly agree with Quax here, which is, I guess, me and Quax agreeing is the new Gordo and me agreeing from the last couple times we did this. I think this is an unfortunate meta for Manui to be coming to play in NACL. We talked about him as the guy that likes to play like the enchanters. Like he's able to play, you bring those like more AP style bottom laners. I think the crit changes, it makes it difficult. I think it's a big buff for every other AD carry in this league. So I have problems with that. I think Shochi, he kind of loses steam at points, and it really hurts him. But I do think the one saving grace is he's probably the best mid laner from a pure fearless standpoint, in that his pool is really unpredictable. So that gives him some credit.
Better
I'm
or
really
worse
high
than
on Chad.
Samikin, Slayer?
He's worse than Samikin.
Okay.
I think he'll be lower than Samikin.
Okay.
Yes. I've been doing the math. I think you are going to expose me, but not by that much.
Okay.
But is he
I'm
worse
already
than Samikin,
surprised
or
at
is
this
he
first one,
lower
but
than
fair enough.
Samikin?
He's lower than Samikin.
Okay, that's
I think
crazy,
Samikin will
but
finish
okay, fair
higher.
enough.
Okay. Fine. That's why they're hot takes. Obviously I capped for Chad at the end of last season. I put him on my All-Pro team. 3, I think. Yes, definitely 3, actually. Chad, I think, is going to be a big piece to them being 7th. And then I am also somewhat buying into Crimson. And I think Trevor is a little bit better than people give him flack for. I think he's one of the smartest engaged. He is an unsung engaged support player that really showed it off, especially for me with his time at UST. Which, yes, is a lower level play. Sue me. I like his engaged support play. So that's enough to get them to 7th. I have the same question marks, though, that Quax has.
Yeah. And we're not that far apart, so I figure the opinions are largely going to be the same. I don't hate Crimson as a prospect. I don't hate Trevor as an NACL level support, but yeah, they are definitely not the reasons this team promoted. The rest of the roster, I'm glad that it kind of came together this way. Supposedly, we hope, we think. Because I heard a lot of names floated. I believe they were talking to a lot of different jungle mid ADs. I'm happy that they ended up with these guys. I think these guys, after the other, this is the last team to come together for sure, by the way.
Yeah, for sure.
And after the other 9 teams came together, I think these were like the best teamless players at each position. So I'm glad that CCG were able to kind of bring them all together, and that we don't end up losing any of these 3 for the league. I think it would be a big shame to lose any of these 3. Even Manui, like I'm lower on Manui too. I just think that like Manui has always been kind of the weak link and very strong overperforming NACL teams. I think like the fact that he didn't live up to like a DSG super team is not like fair to like have him go straight out of the league. I think he deserves like a shot on another roster before people decide they're done with him. And if he doesn't perform here, then he doesn't perform here. And then, I don't feel too badly either way. But like, it's always a shame when a guy goes from like doing better than
hero to zero.
Yeah, like from doing better than expected on a overperforms on a bad team, gets a shot on a super team, doesn't quite live up to the super team, and now it's like, oh, I'm done with you, and like they don't even have a spot anymore. Like that's crazy, and I feel like that would be what would be happening to Manui if he didn't get a team here. So I'm happy that he's still got somewhere to be. But yeah, he's gonna have to show more than he showed last split. He looked like Manui, but he looked like with less willingness to play the sorts of pocket picks that were big for him on Fear. Ziggs bot is kind of coming back. Like, there's been a fair bit of Ziggs bot in LPL because
Seraphine
people
as
want to
well.
play their AD mids and stuff.
It's still there.
It's still
I'm not saying
around.
it's not.
It's not, yeah. Like, and then the Seraphine rework hurts him for sure. I think that was his best champ, and now it's kind of dead.
Yeah.
But you know, there's still the Ziggs, there's still the Vigar. I would like to see more bot laners willing to experiment with AP bot laners, especially in a full fearless world.
I don't know if the clip was recent, but I do want to touch on the Seraphine here. I saw a double lift clip where he was like, you know, I could be going 500 APM. I could be going 500 APM on Zeri. Q key literally turned to dust. My A key barely holding on for dear life. And, you know, I could be losing to just some person that's like off their rocker in the middle of the night playing Seraphine bot lane. Like, coked out at the I just started cracking up, and I don't know, man. While I do think that Seraphine got a lot of hits in the AD carry role, I do think Sarah is just really good to have on your team, right? Like, no matter how bad the laning phase is, this is a champion that if you can stack together, if you do these like deathball comps, these front to back comps, Seraphine will always be amazing. Now, why you would pick Seraphine? Obviously, Seraphine's intended purpose is to, you know, heal everybody and get those big ultimates. Why you would pick that over Sona when I think Sona is arguably a top 3 support in the game right now is beyond me. But, you know.
Well, the other thing is, like, why would you play a bot lane and not support or mid right now? I think the bigger concern for old Manui here. Yeah, Shochi's a player I was super high on after 2023 who didn't quite live up to the hype in spring, but I had him as like a top 2 mid laner coming into spring. You know, prior to the addition of like Quad and Roamer, of course, like those guys were kind of more wild cardy. But like coming out of summer 2023, I had Shochi as a top 2 mid in the league. I don't think he quite lived up to that in spring, but it's not enough for me to like assume he'll get outperformed by Samikin and stuff. Like I think.
Take your shot.
I'm sorry.
This is the fun of it.
I
literally
content,
don't
man.
hate it. I encourage it.
I think yeah, so I'm still pretty high on Shochi. I think he could bounce back really well. I think Chad and Shochi will work very well together. I hope they will at the very least.
Me too.
Yeah, I think they could be super, super good together. TDS, you're mad out of focus, by the way, brother.
I know. I don't know why this happened. Help. No,
help.
Didn't work.
Well, hopefully it'll come back.
I will say
I
though,
think
just
Chad
quickly.
Shochi could like work together. It's like a very strong mid jungle duo, and I really do hope that they do. I think Chad looked very, very good on Fear, and I'm sure he's very happy that he didn't stick with Mirage Alliance after promoting with him. There you go. And yeah, I hope he and Shochi can kind of come together and relive a little bit of that Perry Shochi magic from Cincinnati Fear last year.
Well, it's going to be on them pretty much, and this is the thing why I'm putting them 8th is that I think this team lives and dies by whatever Chad and Shoshi does. Like I think it's fair. The way that this team is set up, and this is the thing with Minui. I don't think that Minui has gone like. It's funny that the trajectory for Minui has been going to the same way or the same type of team every time. Because he has never gone to a team that is bot-centric. Every team that he has played for is top-side-centric. When Fear was at its top, it was Philip, Perry, and Shochi, where they just came in and surprised. Or it was actually Faisal, Perry, and Shochi. It was one of those 2 combinations, but it was those 3 players, or those 4 players. DSG, it was Young, Tomio, and Tenacity, which most would consider to be a strong top side to play for. So you have a bot side that is weak, and you can play for your top side. And now you have technically Crimson that is a wildcard, even though I don't think is going to be one of the top laners. He's still a wildcard that can come in and surprise everyone. And you have Chad and Shochi that can be the hyper carriers of a team. So he's playing on similar circumstances in most of these teams. The problem is that I don't think he's going to excel at it. And I feel like for this team, you need to have a third threat to be able to play off of. Because Chad is consistent, Shochi's not. Like, Shochi, I think it could be the best mid laner in the league. Like, I think he can be over everyone with how he is able to play at his best. The problem is that he doesn't play at his best most of the time. And that's the scary part. So if you depend solely on Chad, I think that's going to be difficult for CCG to be able to maintain a position above 8th or 7th, and I think 8th would be the more consistent one.
That's fair.
I
Yeah.
do really quickly before we move on want to say TDS brought kind of up. I think this is from a champ pool composition wise a good team for Manui's sort of supportive AP style champions, because it's not like they need him to play a hyper scaling AD carry
Yeah.
for why TDS said. Even though I still do think in a meta where crit is king again, it's rough for Manui.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
That's fair. Let's get into DSG. All right. DSG is up next. This roster is Tenacity, Yukino, Young, Tomo, and Poom. And this is where stuff's going to start to get a little crazy. I have this team 6th.
I have him 5th.
Wow. I have them 4th.
Wait, I just blanked which team we were talking
DSG.
about. I just,
DSG.
okay,
Guys.
I just for some reason blanked here. Them. I can see this team being much better than expected. I think they could be a 3rd,
Are
actually.
you going to have him 3rd?
3rd. Really?
Third.
So
All right.
it depends solely on 2 factors.
Okay. You want to
depends
start off
solely
with
on
this? I mean, you
two
got him
I-
highest. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yes.
Go,
I
get into
want
it.
I want to defend it. So it depends solely on 2 factors. One is a mixed one, which is Tenacity and Young. They cannot play like they played in their early stages of the season last split. Like they cannot play like that. They did play well in playoffs, and if they can bring that form, I can see them contesting against most players because they are good players. The problem is that they are not consistent in that sense. And the second thing that worries me, but if it can go over, then they can go against anyone, is Young's Champu. Because he has shown that he has some issues with that sometimes.
Yep.
And Fearless makes it really difficult to go against it. So even though I still think that that is not going to be a big issue for regular season, because once again, BO3, you can play Aurelia, Akali, and Silas. Even if they ban it away, you can play a Zero, which is something that Young can play. So there's things that you can technically play to try and dissuade the Fearless in regular season. But it can still be a weakness of Young if he's not able to play something, a bit more variety in that sense. And if it goes into depending on on Tomo, Yukino, and Tenacity, then it may fall a little bit more difficult. That being said, I think Tomo is a really underrated AD carry, and he's one of the most consistent performers NACL I think has ever had, because he consistently, whenever he has to play, has played to a really high degree.
Yep, I agree. The big separation for me actually was Tomo. I think Tomo has shown that he can be an absolute beast. I think other players that are beasts on the side, I agree. I think the big X factor is Tenacity, right? If Tenacity played like how he played in spring, I think Gordo is probably correct in putting them like 6th. I think Tenacity has a lot to prove. If he can, to me, he doesn't even have to return to like full LCS level, what we saw from him, on his 100 Thieves days, on his, days where he had the spotlight on him. He just has to be passable, in my opinion. And I think you have players like Tomo, who can be that kind of vessel for you to carry through. I think Yukino is really good. Like, I am a certified Yukino fan as a jungler myself. I watch this guy's stream whenever I can, and every time I watch his stream, I swear to God, this guy is super good. So I have a lot of faith in him, and I have a lot of faith that he can bounce really well with Young, because I think Young has kind of a similar attitude that Yukino has. So I think if they can mesh well together, if this top side can just mesh well together, they don't even have to be the best in the league. They can very easily get 4th, which is what I'm placing them. But I also agree with TDS that they can have a ceiling for like 3rd place.
Let me ask you this, Quax. Yukino, I'm excited for Yukino as well. I like him as a player. How do you compare him to Perry?
I think they're similar.
I think they are similar. I think so. Perry is another player that I follow pretty religiously, even though he's no longer in the NACL. He does a ton of coaching stuff as a player that wants to get better. I follow a lot of his coaching. I think from watching Perry play in the NACL and watching Perry in solo queue, Perry is very fundamentals based, right? He takes a lot of the fundamentals. He's very objective focused. I think Yukino has more of he has that, but he also has the ability to just say YOLO. He can go into straight up YOLO mode, like we saw in the promotion tournament, like we saw in OQ, where he just swings whatever weapon he's got at him, and he just uses the enemies as like fodder. Like I think Yukino has the ability to really break out his mechanics. I think Perry, maybe it's the teams that he was on, but his mechanics didn't shine through nearly as much. I think it was his macro that was more heavily of a focus for him, and I think his macro play was very heavily rewarded with teams like Fear. But I think when you put Yukino and you surround him with these mechanical prodigies in Tenacity, who has a lot of mechanics but hasn't really been able to unlock them as of recently, and Young, who I also think has a lot of mechanical prowess, I think if they can work together with that, then it'll be really good. My big question though is the shot caller for this team, because Yukino can obviously be a shot caller. I think Poom has a lot of experience. I would preferably like to see. I'm really concerned as to just who the voice is going to be on this team. Who's going to be the macro compass for this team? Because I can see them hands diffing a lot of teams, but I feel like this team is prone to making some of those bigger mistakes. Sorry, that was a rant. You asked me a simple question.
No,
I
think that's fair to go into. Because I think that's my major concern here is, like, I think Perry really struggled on this team to thrive in spring, and I just don't see Yukino being able to do too much better. And that's under the assumption that, like, Tenacity and Young don't, like, majorly step up and go back to, like, some of the older form we've seen from them. Young, I'm just starting to get real worried about. I've, like, been waiting for a switch to flip in this guy for a while now, to just start being more proactive, start pushing his leads a little bit more, and it's just not coming. Which is a disappointment. I really would like to see Young kind of, like, be the next generation and, like, really step it up. Maybe this will be the split, but I mean, like, I'm not going to, like, come in and make my predictions presuming it anymore. Tenacity especially, I was more disappointed with, I think, than anybody on this team after spring. He felt very limited, felt very reliant on the Aatrox and the Renekton, which is, like, a big surprise for him, like a player that I would have expected to have a little bit more flexibility, but it was, like, especially in the regular season, I mean, it was Aatrox every freaking series, man. He picked Aatrox, I think he had like 9 Aatrox games, I think, in 9 series. I think he played Aatrox every single series. And that's just, I mean, it just felt like a crutch to him. He was, it's not like he was wrecking fools on it either. They had a pretty mediocre regular season. So yeah, I just don't see the changes addressing their problems. I do think Tomo has the potential to be the best AD in NACL. And he could push them higher. But yeah, I'm just concerned about the top side, and I just think, like, if the solo lanes do not change their approach, then I think Yukino will struggle even more than Perry did because of that, like, willingness to play more aggressively.
That's fair.
Because I don't think he's going to get the help, and I think, like, Perry was, like, setting up for plays and, like, not getting the help and just being like, oh, what do we do, guys? Like, Perry's plans would, like, fall apart, and then they would end up just kind of stagnating. I think, like, Yukino's plans might fall apart, and then, like, Yukino's gonna die alone in the jungle, and it'll be even worse.
My metaphor for it would be that Perry was much more of a tactician type jungler, very good at planning things out, and I agree, he didn't get the help that he needed in spring. I think Yukino is more like just a foot soldier, kind of, or like not even like a foot soldier. I feel like that's putting him too low. He's like the Mountain from Game of Thrones, if you guys have ever seen that, because this guy can absolutely wreck fools and split them in half mechanically. My big question is, who is going to be what Perry kind of was for this team? Going to be that voice, the person who says, okay, guys, we have to rotate to this, we have to push this, we have to do this, the person who's going to be the shot caller. I really struggle to see who can be an effective shot caller on this team with how much I feel like this team just is mostly hands, right? Like, I think this top side has a lot of hands diff, and I think Tomo has, some really good hands as well. He's got some insane mechanics. So I am looking at Poom to kind of be that voice, that shot caller. We'll have to see how it pans out, though.
Yeah, so I'm interjecting again. Like, I want to get my points out, even though most of you guys actually made my points. One thing I'll say, this is going to be a repeat of how I felt about Disguise last season. And you guys have kind of highlighted that. I'm too worried about the solo lanes to put them high enough. I'm too worried. And to answer Gordo's question, Samikin will be better than Young at the end of the year. So there's another one for you that I will say.
Clip it.
Clip it. Go ahead. It's fine by me. I think that, yeah. I think the champ pool thing's a problem, and Sam gets the exact opposite side of it. So there's a point for it. I don't trust Tenacity. I don't trust Young. I love Yukino. I think if Bradley was very great for CCG, but the second best player on their run through OQ, their second OQ to win it, and then the promo tournament was Yukino. Even hands down was Yukino. He had multiple 10+ kill games on Xin where he was quite literally in the enemy jungle from minute 3 to minute 12, and he was killing everybody that came at him. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
I think. Go ahead.
And I mean, Yukino is no stranger to playing with mid laners that aren't Bradley and 80 carries that aren't Trevor, right? Because CCG at the beginning of their Swiss stage in OQ2, they had substitutes, right? And I don't think I'm giving a hot take when I say Flocon is a worse mid laner than Young, and E Red is a worse 80 carry than Tomo. So I think Yukino has worked with less and has produced really good results. Now, given the competition in OQs is not as steep as NACL, but I do think that Yukino has shown that he is still good without those, big carry players that were highlighted on Flyquest, right? Like, he can be his own person, and I think it's really just a matter of if the other DSG players can kind of wake up from the slump that they had in spring. If they can do that, I think this team is super, super, super on the road to success. If not, then it could be a disaster. I think this team probably has the biggest variance in placing. Like, this team can go here, but they can also go kind of here, right? Like, they can be very up and down in placings, just depending on certain niche aspects and certain players.
Yeah. On that note, what's actually kind of interesting, this isn't like a criticism of Yukino, but just something to keep in mind as we come into this split, as we try to kind of get a read on him, as he is a very young player still, is, you compare this roster to the last time he was in NACL with 100 Thieves Challengers, or to that CCG roster. It's very interesting that even though this is DSG, right, and it's, they've been putting together really strong teams the whole time they've been here, I do think this is probably the weakest on paper roster Yukino's played at this level with. Because, he was on, a super team pretty much for qualifiers with CCG, thanks to having Instinct and Bradley with him. And then, so, relative to the competition, right, that was, a super team. And then, when he was on 100 Thieves Challengers, you think about it, he had Pretty and Unforgiven and Destiny with him. That was a very strong team for OQs, right? That was Unforgiven's robbed most valuable prospect split, right? He was the best player in the league. He should have won at that split. So very interesting to see how he's going to be able to do here.
Yeah. I am on the Tomio hype train. I like Poom a lot. It really just comes down to me, their bottom lane is going to be good enough to get the middle of the pack. I don't trust Nasty, and I don't trust Young. And it's unfortunately it's fortunately once again gonna kind of. I don't think people are gonna I don't think it's gonna give a disproportionate amount of blame to Yukino, but I think he's kind of in Perry's spot again, and I just hope that it doesn't devalue motivation or anything like that for him, because I do think he's got a bright future. But I got to put him 5th because I think highly of a couple more teams.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into DragonSteel, the artists formerly known as Maryville University. This roster is going to be Niles, UG, Spyrax, Scary Jerry, Zyko. They are running it back, is what we are told. There were some whisperings for a bit about Zamudo potentially starting for them in top lane. It seems like he has joined up with Maryville. But it sounds like Niles is going to still be the starter, at least for the summer. I have this team at 3rd.
I have him 3rd as well.
I have him 3rd.
I think they're 2nd.
Well, TDS starts again.
Man, TDS, you are just the contrarian of the group.
Yeah.
No, he's gonna finish. He's gonna be last. It has proportionality. He has too many teams higher than us, so at some point
he's gonna. I know, and I'm worried about it coming up. I think I know what it's gonna
yeah.
be too.
I'm worried.
You guys should already know which is my 10th place team. Like,
Oh,
it's
I know
not
what
a
your 10th
mystery.
place team is, but I'm worried that, like, I assume there's a team coming up that's going to be, like, 6th,
Well-
and we're going to have to fight
well,
about it, but whatever.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's gonna be weird.
we'll get to it because we are.
It's gonna be
what are we,
interesting. But so
5
for
teams
now,
in an hour.
so I've doubted already enough Maryville to not believe in them now. And I think they are, yes, they lost Silo just now. Yes, they lost NACL last split. But I think they have shown to be such a consistently good team that they can achieve second place behind the #1 team, which I think everyone agrees who it is.
Yeah.
But like, they're a strong team. They have really good players. Once again, I think Spyrex and Judy are looking to be top 2, if not top mid lane jungle in the league, depending on how things go. And Scary Jerry has had one of the biggest glow ups for a lot of people. I already thought that he was one of the better AD carries, but he has had a lot of big glow up for a lot of people. So I think that they can just keep driving that consistency towards the second place, especially with the fact that they are one of the longer staying teams, right? Like, they will play longer than any other team combined, pretty much, with counting the split. So I think that overall, this should be a really strong team. They should be #2. I don't think there's much for me to doubt about him as of now. Only place where they can improve in my eyes is top lane, but there's no other top laner that I think right now can go above and beyond what Niles provides for the team, unless they are like either 30 level or above that.
You don't want to put
And
Zamudo
there's not
in?
a lot of top laners for that.
I mean, Zamudo. Okay, I knew Gordo was about to say that. I think Zamudo has, he's a very good top laner. Niles, to me, though, is more than a solid top laner for DragonSteel. He's the shot caller. He's the team captain, right? Zamudo is not going to be the team captain.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
I do think Niles is he kind of has like a Jensen thing going around him, where it's like Jensen might not have been the best player when he was on Flyquest, but he was quintessential in the sense that he could be a rock and he could be a shot caller. I think Niles kind of fills that same purpose, even though you can replace him with maybe more mechanically gifted top laners. His ability to lead the team and lead the charge is something that is irreplaceable, at least for the time being. And I think the rest of the team is right behind him. So I think even though this team did slump most recently in the CLOL finals, they're back with a vengeance, right? And I'm excited for it.
I do want to say, I completely agree with you on the Zamudo Niles thing, by the way. Zamudo, I think, would give them more firepower, but would lose them their player coach / shot caller. I don't know if that would move them down or not. I'm glad it's not something I have to think about.
Yeah.
But I will just say, like, to take a step back about Maryville here, like, the fact that they're getting Zamudo here, I think is, like, emblematic of, like, Maryville is so well set up, like, going into the future, now that they're, like, not in that fighting to not get relegated territory that they were in for a little bit there when they were in, like, the Get Back Odd Orange rosters. Like, the fact that they're safe from that now, like, nobody thinks this team is at risk of relegation, just means that, like, going into the future as, like, guys like Niles, and I think Zyko is kind of getting close to graduation as well. He had some kind of tweet about that being his last CLOL.
Yeah.
So I think Zyko's kind of getting up there too. But it's what's so awesome for them, right, is especially as, like, incentives start to push more and more players to go and get, like, an education. They are just such an attractive landing spot. Like, they just get to sit there, and some of the fucking best talent in the region just comes to them. Like, they just get, like,
much.
they just get Yuji after Fly Challengers is done with them. They just get him. They just get Spyrax back. After they just get Zamudo, like, he's not even starting, and they just get him. He just comes in through the door because they can offer stuff that no other school can offer: a super competitive program while you're getting an education and a really solid NACL spot. Like, that's just amazing for them. That's so great. And, like, they're such an attractive landing spot because they've made these sorts of tough calls already to show that, like, they will build their roster to win. They will not, like, make concessions for seniority and stuff like that. Like, I think that was, like, I didn't really give them enough props for this last split, I don't think, because we didn't know the roster at the time. But I'm going to give it to them now. Like, the fact that Odd Orange, who has been with you for, years, for so many years, through thick and thin, playing for Maryville in C-Law, getting them really far, got them qualified for NACL, played in their first split in NACL, all these things, is on his like last year with the program, and you have this brand new UG guy coming in, and you're like, nah, see ya, Odd Orange. Like, that's got to be such a tough personal decision to make. And like I say Clerky. I don't know if it's Clerky's call. I don't know whose call it is, but the fact that they make that call and they do put in the better player and they do make themselves the better team, despite how tough that must be. I mean, mad respect to MU, and like that should cement them as like the premier collegiate program to go to, even though they lost C-Law.
Yeah, I mean they will
Yeah.
be. They still are.
Sure.
I still had to put them third, lower than I guess like I think consensus is, because I think you gotta have a bit of a come down, right? It's like the high of second, the high of making the grand finals. Like there's gonna be a bit of a slump. That's what I'm thinking. Somewhere there's gonna be a slump. Also, the fact that I think this is a much stronger NACL than the season they went to the grand finals. So that factors in. And then the third reason that I'll allude to more later is there's just a team that I think put together a roster that I am a little bit more excited about, and I do think can compete and be better than Maryville. So I think Maryville is still like S tier Maryville. I just think they're sectioned a little bit lower than the team we'll likely talk about in a bit.
Long live the STL. All right, let's get into Fear X Starforge, who I did not prep for right. I did not put my number in. All right, Fear X Starforge.
That name.
This roster is Philip, XU, Ablaze Olive, Instinct, and Winsome. Changed over from JJ for anybody who caught their original announcement and did not catch the follow-up. JJ had some kind of emergency. He can't play, so they have gotten Winsome instead. I have this team second.
Go, Gordo. I've got them second as well.
Yep.
Go ahead.
TDS.
TDS,
Okay.
Quax, whoever.
Apart from the fact that I think the name is not it, but just in case if Starforge wants to sponsor us, I'm totally love the name. Best idea ever, best league collaboration I've ever heard. Just putting it out there. But apart from that, I think this team is, I would say, a 6 for me actually.
Woo! I knew it was coming. I called it earlier.
All
right, Quax, what do you got, man?
All right.
He's got him third, I bet.
So I have them second.
You have them second.
Yep.
Okay.
I got them second.
Wait. I thought you had them second. My bad.
So there's a few things. One, I think this team is really good. Two, I want this team to be really good. If not for the fact that I just like Fear as a program, and I like, their sponsorship. I think that's kind of cool. I agree. FXS does not roll off the tongue, but I just like. I mean, I really want good stories here for XU, and now I really want good stories here for Winsome. I feel like Winsome has been the most undervalued support in the region, and it's not even close. I feel like Winsome has consistently shown up on rosters. He has consistently been able to be a good stand-in for other supports in particular. Wasn't he a stand-in? I believe it was on Flyquest or Team Liquid where he was replacing... Yeah, like he was on Flyquest and everyone said he was amazing, right? So it's one of these things where it's like Winsome to me has permanently been shafted because no one talks about him, but he has always put up impressive results. And there was another team that we'll get to later where he was going to be put on their role. He was going to be put on their team, but he ended up switching or getting switched at the last moment. That would have made me really upset. So I am really glad that he is on Fear. I'm really glad that XU is here as well. I think XU deserves a redemption story. With all the stuff that has been happening with him, I really want this team to do well at the end of the day, and I think they have every tool in their arsenal to be able to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a Slayer loud rampage here. So XU should not be here. He should be in the LCS. I think he had a very impressive LCS split. Shout out XU for getting me to my fantasy championship. carried me in Gordo's league. So that's one. Winsome should be in the LCS. I will recognize that in a more it's a tough spot. Like in a more ideal situation, Winsome should be in the LCS for reasons Quax is talking about. You look at the rest of the roster, and I think Instinct has an LCS ceiling, and he showed it at points.
Yep.
I think we can all recognize that Blaze Olive has had an LCS ceiling at points. He'll show it. I'll recognize, yes, it's a question mark. Hasn't played in a while in competitive scenes. Took a very long break, but you can't. Talent is talent. So I think a Blaze Olive is not going to be better than Samikin, to answer Gordo's question before he asks it. A Blaze Olive will be higher than Samikin. And then Philip is quietly been an underrated top laner in the NACL for a while that we haven't gotten to talk about because top lane has arguably been the most stacked role. So I love this roster. I also am with Quax. I need this roster to be as good as I'm putting them because I just love Fear so much.
Yep.
Like if you're listening to Fear, like send me a jersey, man. I will cap for you guys like crazy, bro. This is my roster that I love so much, and that's saying a lot because of how much I love the two teams that promoted up to here, the Orbs that promoted up to here. So it's just so much of it's coming together. And if there wasn't goddamn Thanos in this league, I would have thrown him one. But like, man, this is just so much cool. This is just so. It's so sick. It's just so sick if things could just please go right with Blazall's return, with Winsome finally getting back on a team where he can shine, Instinct's back. Philip has a team that's so stacked around him that he could be the top laner that we always want to be. I could yap for days, but that's why they're my second, and I think they're just a bit better than Maryville will be this year.
Mm-hmm.
TDS.
All right, TDS.
Can I go?
Take us down.
You better.
Please.
All right. What are the points?
So I could think this team is not necessarily bad on paper. The problem is that obviously the paper doesn't always carry you, and I think that this is probably one of the teams that it's going to apply one of the things that I mentioned before, and it's how Fearless will work in the BO3s. It does impact to a certain degree. Not every team is going to be impacted by this, but I think this team is going to be one of the impacted because when I try to take into account the players here, I don't envision a lot of them having huge champion pools when thinking about it. I don't think a Blazolive is a huge champion pool player. I don't think Philip has ever been a huge champion pool player. Like, his best games have been consistently and mainly on two tanks, which were Kisanti and Ornn, and then Renekton. Those were the games that I consistently think he was consistently good at. So I don't think that these players have enough of a pool for me to think that they are going to thrive in something like Fearless, especially because they play contested champions. Like, it's not like they play unique champions like Samikin. They play contested champions, so it's not going to be easier for them to try and play what they like to play without it getting taken away. And then the other thing that I'm not fully sold out on this roster is first the urgency that they got win someone. Like, that is going to put a little bit of a strain on their preparation and how they want to prep for the team, even though I think he's a great player. Like, we need to remember how it affected in the previous split the huge changes that went on Mirage. So even just one player could end up affecting how some of the preparation goes for some of these players. And then you have to take into account the amount of time that some of these players have been off of the high level of play, right? Like, a Blaze Olive took, I think it's been 3 splits since he stepped out, or 2 splits since he stepped away from every sort of competition. Instinct also hasn't been consistently in the higher echelon of play. XU is not that far away. He played LCS in the last split, and I think he was one of the better performers. But obviously, this can also affect some of the motivation that some of these players have. Not saying that he's going to be impacted in a great way, but it still costs, or it plays a part in your mindset. Like, you still think and doubt yourself sometimes that if I'm down here, maybe it's because I'm not good enough. And I hope that doesn't impact XU, but that may be a factor to consider. So I just feel like this team, even if in paper have the players to succeed, I can also see out of the paper that they have a lot of difficulties that I think they have to go through, or at the very least for me, especially with the other teams that are ahead of them in my eyes.
I mean, I feel like motivation is probably at an all-time high for basically all of these players, right? Most of these players have been in the LCS, they got they're like sugar addicted children at this point. They got a taste of sugar, and now they want all the fucking candy in the goddamn basket, right? So they're really trying to get back to that level. Like most of these players want to get back to the LCS because they rightfully believe, and I agree with Slayer that I think most of these players have an LCS ceiling, that they should be an LCS. So I do think that this team, if we were ranking motivation and we were ranking like probably a team most likely to have that drive in them to be first, to be the best, to showcase their talent, I would be putting this team first because I really think all of these players on this roster, you know, they have been in the LCS and they want to get back. So I can see the motivation being at an all-time high, and I can see that potentially catapulting them, especially if they don't have good results right away. Right, I can certainly see this team kind of maybe going into like panic mode, where you know maybe they don't do super well in the first half, and from there, the motivation either dies out or they just get frantic and they lose focus. I can see that very well being like a possibility for some of these players who are so desperate to get back to where they once were that they might, you know, lose track on the way there, on the way to trying to get there. But for the most part, I don't know. I just think that this roster, on paper, like TDS said, is incredibly stacked. I'm really excited for this team overall. I really want them to succeed. I really want all of these players to make it.
Yeah. I do just agree. I think like pound for pound, player for player, like there's always the risk, right, that a Blaze Olive shows back up and he's not like the player that he was before, but I mean, mid is still, I think, pretty weak in the league. Like, you know, we say it gets stronger this split, but I think a lot of the reason we say it gets stronger this split is because of a Blaze Olive. Like, you know, Bradley's coming into the league too, but he's replacing Quad, so
I think Romer.
Yeah.
I think Romer and Toasty step ups are.
I agree. Like, I think
also a
Romer
factor
and
for me.
Toasty can get better too. But that's still like, I mean, even if that does happen, I still think a Blaze Olive comes in and is probably by default better than 5 or 6 mid laners in the league.
Most
Yeah,
of
yeah.
them,
You know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I would be very surprised if he's not like a top half mid laner just by default, given that the position is relatively weak right now. And then like I think the upside there is like he could come in and be like the best mid laner in the league, or like a top 2 mid laner in the
Yep.
league. And then he and XU I think are just like clapping fools. Like I think I mean I just think there's a huge amount of upside here across the board. I think Phillip's been like a top 3, top 4 top laner in this league consistently for a bunch of splits in a row now. I agree about Winsome being underrated. I think he's been very, very good in this league every time he's been here. He was great on Fly Challengers last time he was here, yet still didn't get a spot last split somehow. I hope it was his choice. I don't know. And yeah, Instinct, I think looked great on CCG. I think he'll continue to look great. He was splitting time in LCS. I guess last time we saw him was Fly Fam, and that was not great. But before that, he was splitting time in LCS, looking pretty good. So I think he'll continue to look great here. I'm pretty high on this team. Well said. I'm curious to see. TDS is really gonna have some bragging materials here if this team doesn't pan out.
True.
Up next is
Completely
Flyquest
dependent.
Challengers NZXT.
Oh boy.
This team is Surdy, Shaden, Bradley, Sajed, and Chime. I have this team first.
Yeah, like we're not. We
This'll
can
be
be
a quick
fun,
one.
but we're not stupid, guys. Like it's all one. It's once across
It's
the
once
board.
across the board. It's unanimous, right? TDS Quax, yes.
I'm gonna let TDS
Well,
go just in
no,
case
of course,
he
yeah,
has
yeah,
a
yeah.
he has a hot
I
take.
wouldn't be
Okay.
capable of.
Yeah.
Like, I agree.
Yeah.
It's, I don't think there's
I mean,
anything
I don't think.
I feel like we have the least to say about this. I also put them first. I feel like we have the least to say about this team. I mean, what exactly is there to say about this team? Surdy is still the most shafted player in the entire Western Hemisphere, for all I know, for the fact that he can literally win everything and still not get into the LCS. Shaden is also in that boat.
Surdy is
Sajed
why
and
we need a
Chime are
promotion
insane.
slot. Surdy is why the
Yes.
promotion series is why the promotion slot matters so much.
Now,
It's funny how. Sorry to cut your
You're
class, but it's funny how they lost. They had the 2 best players in the league. They lost one of the 2 best players in the league, and then immediately replace him with potentially the next best player in the league. So like they just immediately made a side read to whatever else could happen with Bradley in the mid lane. Like maybe Roll Murray is a tad bit better, but apart from that, I don't think anyone is going to even come close to Bradley in that sense.
Yeah, I think the
Certainly,
big
yeah.
question, the big question this split for B is not if they're going to get first, but if they'll look more dominant than they did in spring. And I don't think so. I just think Quad was that good, and I don't think Bradley is as good as Quad. That said, I think Surdy just literally gets better and better every time I see him. I'm thinking this guy is better than the last time I saw him. He's better than the last time I saw him. So who knows? Maybe he has a ramping power spike, but his power spike is already gone above the damn stratosphere. So I don't know how much higher it can get.
Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah.
He's,
He's
I think
so
Surdy
good.
might be the best player in the league right now, to be honest. Like, I think there's
Oh yeah.
like,
I think so.
yeah. He's.
I-
Go ahead, Slayer.
I was gonna say like the one minuscule question mark you have here, and Gordo will have it, I guess, mostly, is Sajed. But the one thing we can all agree on is that Sajed is in the most pristine of pristine situations. We're talking utopia to have a second year come up, right? Like there is literally nothing that's going to deter him from growing as an AD carry.
Yeah.
So yeah. The one thing I'll say is I'm stealing TDS's flow here. I tweeted it out. This is why I tweeted out when I saw this roster. This is your esports equivalent of Real Madrid signing Mbappe. That's literally all we have to say.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's crazy more of these guys weren't promoted while Immortals is running back the same squad.
It's so disappointing.
If
man.
you swap
I mean,
teams, IMT doesn't win this league.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like better them wait for a better opportunity than get stuck in IMT. I've seen a bunch of I mean, look at what happened to Kenvi, right? Like, I'm not saying Surdy's
I think
Kenvi,
Surdy
but
would
I am-
rather be getting the paycheck right now. I'm not gonna lie. I think he would take an Immortals job if it was offered
Yeah.
to him.
Maybe.
But either way, like a quick shout out here. They got Cryo on the sub now. They picked up
Yes.
Cryogen.
Which problem?
The ACL to LCS affiliate pipeline remains undefeated. For those who don't know, Cryogen he's 17 now, I believe. Really young support player,
Yep.
up and coming. Been playing in like ACL and OQs for a while on like Clown Gaming and stuff. Great player. Was really looking forward to seeing him in OQs. It looks like he may be skipping that a little bit, jumping right in. But I mean that's a terrific path. Huge for him to be LCS affiliate already. And Chime announced that this will be his last split, so he may have a spot waiting for him in 2025.
So smart from Fly.
That would be.
Well,
I would
so
feel
far.
so good for Cryogen, man. Like, not only is he on, like not only does he get to just jump right into it, but having a player like Chime who has been
yeah.
around for so long be your mentor, it's
Huge.
like, dude, that's so cool. Like, Chime can be like your Master Oogway. Chime can be your Master Yoda, and it's to me going to put Cryogen in a really good spot where I hope he can be developed further, because he definitely is the future of this program, right? Even when Surdy, Shade, and Bradley, Sajed, and Chime, even when they've all gone, Cryogen will probably be, the longest standing member here in Tier 2. And I think being able to have that basis with such good surroundings is setting him up for success. So I'm actually really happy for him in this scenario. I think it's a really good thing for him.
Yeah, and the only other thing is I'd like to perhaps teach some of our audience, because some people may be newer to Tier 2 in that they've come in the NACL era or more recently than that. So they may not be familiar with this, but Bradley was originally a mid laner, right? Bradley was a converted mid laner to top lane when he joined Team Liquid. This was in an era where this was like pre-Jojo Putin times, you need to remember. So this is when like NA mid was unthinkable to actually start.
It was mainly import.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you could not be. I think Bradley made like a strategic decision at that time in his career where he's like, I will never go pro as an American-born mid laner. I'm gonna roll swap to top lane. And I think he did pretty well in that time. I think the funny thing about thinking about that time is if you think back to Bradley's stint in top lane, like his tanks and bruisers weren't all that great, like compared to the best. Like I think his Scion was super good, but like his Ornn, his Renekton, his Aatrox, his Cassante were never like super standout. It was always like his Gangplank, his Kennen, his Akali that were
The
super
Akali.
impressive. So I think like looking back, it's like you could really feel the converted mid laner in him, and I'm really excited to see him back in like his home role.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he was just shitting on people in OQs, right? Like I feel like Bradley got a lot less talk in the OQs because of players like Samakin, who literally no one had heard of until those OQs had started, and the fact that he came out of nowhere. A lot of people were talking about, we're gassing up Samakin in those OQs and in that promotion tournament. But no one ever said that Samakin was the best mid laner in the OQs because it was always unanimously Bradley, right? Like Bradley was always the best player in OQs. He was arguably always the best player. No, not arguably. He probably was the best player in the promotion tournament.
Yep.
Like this guy is just
Him
on
or
another
Neo.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was shitting on people with like the most insane picks. This guy would pick LeBlanc, and this is a time when LeBlanc was kind of in the gutter. AD LeBlanc had just been nerfed. He was destroying people, right? So he literally wasn't even playing the meta, and he was still putting up like all-star numbers. Yeah. So I think like his ability to go into some of those, go deeper into his pockets in terms of picks, is something that also puts him a T above so many of these other mid laners who we've all been saying have had really limited champ pools, right? I feel like Bradley does not have that same issue, and he's shown it just even most recently, right? That he can play whatever you give him.
Yep. All right. Well, there's our Bradley glazing. Let's get on to Supernova. Always happy to glaze Bradley here. Let's get on to Supernova. Supernova is running a roster of Faisal, Kenvi, Toasty, Lens, and Diamond. And forgive me for this, I have this team 5th.
I have him 4th.
I have them 6th.
I have them 3rd.
Okay.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting this.
All right.
All right.
So it's me versus TDS.
I guess so.
All right. So I guess I can speak on this. So personally, Supernova is the team that I don't have a ton of notes on. I think this team is good, but I do think there is a very clear ceiling. I think Kenvi is really gonna. I think Kenvi in particular is really gonna thrive in this era. Slayer was saying earlier that crit is king. You give this guy Kindred, he will turn the entire map into a horror show for the enemy team. Right? Kindred is super good with all these new crit items. If you can give Kenvi some of these carry champions, which I feel like are more preferable in this current meta, then I think I can see this team being really good. That said, the players he's surrounded with, I don't have the biggest amount of faith in. Like Faisal, I think is good, but I don't think he's that good. I think Toasty is really inconsistent, and I think that Lens and Diamond are, I will admit my ignorance in this regard, are a bit of a question mark for me, but I don't see them being so good that they can really be, those guys.
I think I'm a little shocked with Gordo's spot. I guess it's against his narratives, but I know why. And I think I know why. I think that I think Toasty was really impressive, really good rookie. I do think looking back that he benefited a lot because his jungle duo was also very good. Like we talked about that. Here's the caveat though. He's playing with a better jungler.
Yeah, like
He's
I was
with
gonna say, Kenvi has been better version of Chad for both of their careers the whole time.
That's what I got to, right? I got there. So I think Kenvi Toasty is like one of the most high upside mid jungle duos in the league. Which is very fun. I think Lens and Daption were underrated. I know they got separated, but Lens was a part of that. I think that's also a very good. It's not an upgrade because they're running array, but I think it's not like a just like you're not going down. It's like a little gradual. I think Lens could step into those shoes. Diamond solid. I think Faisal is around the same conversations of Philip. He's below him, but he's up there. I think he fulfills the tank need very well next to Kenvi. I just really like this top side a lot. I like the upside. I like the top side. And I think Supernova has invested a lot to bring this roster together. they do end up lower than I thought they were last year. I do think it's a bit worse of a team than last year, mainly just with AD, because without
Yeah.
Shoji played, I think Toasty will actually not really be a downgrade at all. And if you say it's a downgrade, it's up more upside than I think Shoji would give you. So I think Supernova is going to be fourth. They're fourth for me because of a product of what I've already talked about with the teams ahead of them, which we just said Fear and yeah, I mean, like the last three teams we actually talked about in alphabetical order. So I've already given my reason why they have to slot a little bit lower.
I can go
Should I go?
next, I suppose. One thing I do want to say about like the lens array thing is, I like my instinct is to agree with with Slayer's analysis there that like lens feels like a little bit of a downgrade, you know, compared to array. You think of like array and his like pedigree and stuff like that, but like clearly Supernova doesn't feel that way because like they seems to be like they could have kept array if they wanted to. Like array's out of
Yeah.
the league.
Mhm.
Array's playing in OQs. So like it really seems to me like they feel like lens is an upgrade. I mean, I think this is probably my favorite roster. I just can't justify moving any of my top 4 down. But it is probably my favorite roster coming into the split. It's just like they already have a top tier kind of supportive enabling cast in Diamond and Faisal. I think are two of the best supportive players in the league. And like I think Kenvi is a fantastic enabler as well. Like he can carry on his own, of course, but I think he also can really set up a mid laner for success. You know, thinking back to his time with like Copy and people like that.
Rep. Oh
and-
man, don't bring Copy up.
I'm sorry,
in front
man,
of me,
but that's
bro.
like that was Gen 100 Thieves Next. You got to a little bit. So yeah, like thinking back to that, like I think Kenvi can definitely really help out this guy too. I agree. Like I feel like Kenvi's kind of like been better Chad for a lot of his career. And for that reason, I think that this will be a really great setup for Toasty. They're just really betting on having this top tier supporting cast and staking their claim on some like strong upcoming carries in Lens and Toasty. Is the direction Supernova's chosen to go here. Massive breakout opportunity here for Toasty, especially. Like if this team overperforms and is like playing in the LCS studio for the finals or something, which is well within the range of outcomes for this Supernova team, I think any of the top 6 would not shock me to be in finals. I think it's a very close league this split. And if Supernova does it and is in there, like Toasty will be a very legitimate promotion candidate for 2025. Like I'm willing to say that right here, right now, right? Like this is, I think of players to watch in the NACL if you're like very LCS oriented and you want to see the next upcoming LCS players, Toasty could be in the LCS in 2025. It's well within the range of outcomes.
I agree.
That-
Especially
that
because you
is-
know that I love to throw them into the fire and see
Yeah,
how they
he's
perform.
just-
So I
He's
wouldn't
the
be
right
against it.
age. He's the right experience level. He's the right. He's the right recipe, right? If he shows up in Split 2 and grows even more from Split 1 and continues on that trajectory and ends this split as one of the best mid laners in NACL, teams will be very interested in him.
Yes.
So why
I agree.
why does TD what's the third place though, TDS? What's the
So-
over the hump?
Yeah, the reasoning why I think they are third place is because I think they're undervaluing some of their players actually, which I'm kind of surprised with 2 of them particularly. Like I think Toasty and Kimby are in the right point where you're valuing both of them. I think Kimby could potentially be one of the best junglers in the league, if not the best. Like he is a player that is capable of performing like that, especially at this level. Like he has had his issues or troubles in the LCS, but I think in NACL he can slide in perfectly and he can be one of the top performers. And Toasty is one of the up and comers that I think time is going to show that he is going to be one of the candidates, like Gordo is saying, to go up there to the LCS. I think that he has all the tools. He never shies away from going for plays, which I think is such an important quality for mid laners, especially in a region that thrives or lacks the potential to actually just commit to certain things. I think having players that are willing to go throw everything into a play and make it work out is a crucial advantage to have, and I think that that's something that Toasty will be able to showcase if he gets more opportunities with some of these teams. But I'm surprised with the take on Lens and Faisal, because Faisal, when we first came in with the Fear roster, he was the player that was played for in that Fear roster. it was Shochi and Faisal the ones that were played for because they were playing with Minui, so it was a top centric top lane. They played things like obviously the Kisante, but he had a great Renekton as well. Gwen was a really standout champion from him as well. So I'm surprised that he's not looked at more as a potential carry player for this team, but he also can play through trying to facilitate for other players. And the other one that I'm surprised is Lens. I think he's one of the most not appreciated, but I would say misunderstood players because of the time in some of the teams. I think that he's one of the most consistent AD carries to actually make it so that you can win a team fight with their AD carry. And I don't mean he has perfect positioning or anything like that. Like his damage output and the way that he plays out team fights, not only positioning wise, but the way that he reads some of the fights makes him a really strong AD carry to just play out in difficult situations. Like something that I would say Sayed has when looking at Flyquest Challengers team fights. So when he moves, it's for a reason, and it's not only his positioning, but the way that he decides to engage and make things happen in a team fight that actually makes him such a scary AD carry. And I think Lens has had the misfortune to a certain degree of being in teams where others are more wacky and surprising than him, and that's why you never see them mentioning Lens because the first team that he was on was that wildcard team where Moose Hater was wow, Moose Hater, Garen, Sack, amazing. And don't get me wrong, I love that. But then you obviate the fact that Lens was one of the best parts of that roster, if not the best. Like he was actually much, much, much important to wildcard success than Moose Hater. Even though Moose Hater had the fancy picks. And I think that they are not, or there's not enough like value to what Lens bring forward to the team, to a team. And I think that he can be a hyper carry that teams can play around with. So I'm surprised that there's so little like affection towards Lens. In the same vein that I also think he was one of the best parts in the Fear team last time.
I think that's an amazing take. I agree with you. I mean, like I have him fourth. The problem is I just like Fear a lot more. Like
yeah, no, I think
yeah,
I think it's a great point. And sorry, answering the Gordo question, I think Toasty will be better than Sam again.
That's fair. Me too.
Fair enough.
I feel
Totally
so
fair.
bad, dude. Sammy is such a nice guy, and he's been so nice to me the whole time I've known
dude,
him.
he's like he's like the only pro player that will like respond to me on social media. All the other pro players, they're too good for me. Samikin, though,
Yeah,
he's
I know.
got my back. If
love,
I ever make
love
a shit,
Sammykin. I
Sammykin is a
don't
great guy.
mean to trash
Okay.
talk you, man. I really don't. I just listen.
not.
And by the way, this show's been going on for a little bit. I have been this way on every rookie mid that comes into NACL. I was low on Toasty last split. I was low on APA back in our first season. Like I've been wrong before, man. So prove me wrong, please. But this is a tendency. You can track this. This is nothing personal.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to Team Liquid Challengers. And I've been right some of those times too, by the way. Don't want to make it sound like
Just
I'm always
bringing it
wrong.
up.
It's not true.
I picked wildcard to be fifth last time, so and I was right.
You did. They were
I am
fourth
also
actually
right
at the end of the
sometimes.
season.
Well, everyone else had them. What was the consensus salty run back place? Ninth?
Yeah, it was like 9.
Yeah.
Or did they
They
had them
higher
10th,
than
didn't
9,
they?
I
Had
think.
Salty
I
Runback
think
had them
they-
10th.
they-
I remember because we were like we
Yeah.
responded to them. We were like we have them.
Yeah.
We have MU universally 10th. How?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair to Grapes and Hawk, they did a community poll.
They
so,
did a
like, I don't
community
think it
poll,
was
yes.
just them. It was a lot of people.
Mhm.
But-
yeah.
And we don't know if did they do it with the roster with Odd Orange or did they do it with the roster?
They did it with the roster with
Spirals?
the Otter Orange get back.
Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
they did.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into Team Liquid Challengers. Team Liquid Challengers are also running it back. For those who don't know, it's Jenkins, Keel, Roamer, Spawn, Kim down. And for the memes, I have this team 4th.
I have them sixth.
I have them 5th.
DDS?
Fifth.
5th.
Finally
All right,
the
I'm the
negative
highest,
Nancy.
which surprises me. I feel like I'm always the
This is
teal.
what I thought, though.
I'm always
This
the
is- I-
teal
this-
hater. Yeah, I just can't, like... For the memes
Gordo
and for
and
the
Korean
improvement.
mids,
like,
man.
Keel
Gordo
Roamer
and
really
Korean
stepped up as a
mids.
duo coming into the back half of the season. The talent across the board makes me excited for their split number 2. I think they're growing together. I think they were getting better with time towards the back end of last split. I think Roamer's in like a unique position to be like the best mid in the league now. with Quad gone. Maybe Bradley or a Blaze Olive or Toasty step up and are like better, but I think like the baseline assumption, if we take their levels at the end of spring split, I think Romer would be at the top probably if you were to like put a dipstick in and see exactly what what your mid lane talent level is at. I think Romer would be at the top at the end of spring. I think he and Keel have really grown together as a duo. I think this is Spawn's meta. Like I think Spawn's a great late game carry kind of player, and when the team is jiving together better across the map, I think that's when Spawn really shines. I think Spawn really is very momentum driven. Like when he's on bad teams, he always looks really bad, and when he's on good teams, he tends to look pretty good. And I think this TM Liquid team will be very good. I'm a huge Jenkins fan. I think Jenkins is one of the best tops in the league. Think he's got some spicy picks, as does Keel, that Full Fearless will get to expose a little bit. I'm pretty high. I'm just pretty high up on this team. I can't justify putting them below 4th after the growth they showed me last split, and keeping in mind the talent that's on here.
But I feel like, well, okay, you go first, Slayer.
I mean, I was just gonna, because I put him 6th. Like this was I forgot about the one trope that always beats Gordo's favorite players is him in Korean mid. So I knew when he put Toasty down at 5th that it had to be Romer above him. So
it's not just.
Do you have Romer in
your
your? I know, but do you have Romer positionally? You have Romer positionally higher than Toasty on your positional rankings.
I didn't actually do my position by position rankings, so I'm kind of ad hocing. I know I usually do, but I'm moving right now. I've been so busy the last week.
Right. I mean, you kind of just said you.
I think I do. I think like baseline. I think I think I would have Romer higher, and I mean like the stats back that up, right? Like Romer.
That's fine.
Romer was statistically the second best mid in the league last split.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just
pretty much every metric. It was Quad. I mean, Quad was the number 1 by a lot, but by pretty much every metric, especially lane metrics, Romer was number 2. Romer was I mean, like Romer's biggest weaknesses were like team cohesion wise, like when like he and Keel would be on totally wrong pages going for plays, especially early in the season. But individually in the 1-on-1, I think Romer was superb.
Yeah. So I'm just really worried about their bot side. That's what it is for me. I understand. I accept this. This is definitely Spawn's meta. They were, dare I say, the most dysfunctional bottom lane from at least the regular season. I would say they were.
It's more dysfunctional than Mirage Alliance's bottom.
Okay. Second.
Fair enough.
Second most dysfunctional. Fair enough, Quax. But I think. I need them to show that they're not going to start slow, and that's why I have them 6. Because I think you start slow in this league, it's going to burn you more than last time. So they can't start slow this time around. I'm afraid they are going to. I think their bottom lane is very much so in the bottom half of bottom laners of AD carry duos. Maybe a little bit higher for me because I'm not high on Manui, and we'll get to the last team. But I don't trust their bottom lane. I need to see them start faster. I'm a little bit lower on Jenkins than Gordo. There's some top laners that I'll put that I like more. And there's a lot of really good mid jungle duos we already talked about, right? That I just can't justify Keel and Romer's synergy not being there to put above a Bloliv and XU. Shane and Bradley, obviously, like. Ken v Toasty we already talked about. It's just rough. So they're a casualty of my other takes somewhat, and I need to see something from Spawn and Kim down that will make me trust them in a meta where bottom lane has a more stronger say coming into this primer than I think last time we did a primer. So I had to doubt somebody. Unfortunately, it's Team Liquid Honda Challengers.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that TL are a very interesting case where I think like
you look at the other rosters in the NACL, and to me it feels like Team Liquid Challengers act as the divide, kind of, because I feel like there is a very, very clear difference between the top 4 teams and the bottom teams, right? And I kind of feel like Team Liquid, you know, I aptly put them at 5th, and that's the middle, right? But I do feel like they kind of set the boundaries for where I think these teams are going to end up. Like, I think I can see the top 4 teams, save except Flyquest Challengers, all being, you know, numbered 1 through 4th. I can't really see them I can't really see them going, you know, lower than that. Maybe they get 5th. But I do think that Team Liquid are definitely the middleman in this league. Like, I definitely think, like, they're not amazing. They're not terrible. I just really do think that they are like they're the definition of middle of the pack. Like, I agree with Slayer. I think that a lot of the synergies that they have are good, just not better than some of the other ones that are in this league, right? So, like, it's good enough to be middle of the pack, but it's not good enough, in my opinion, to be much higher.
I'm surprised to hear that. Yeah, I don't know. I think of the last 6 teams we've talked about, I think are all. I could see them finishing in any order.
I do think TL have a ceiling, like a good ceiling. I will put that
I'll
out
say-
there. They could be 3rd for me. Like, they
The
could.
problem with TL is that you can never take their regular season ranking for anything.
That is fair.
Regular season team. So, and that's the thing. That's why I put them 5th, because I think that they can be better than what they actually are, but at the same time they can be worse, because regular season is never the thing that makes them stand out. It's always how they prep towards the last 2 weeks
That's
and
fair.
then playoffs. So I think that they are a perfect middle of the ground kind of team, where 5th or 6th is, I think, perfect spot for them, that allows them to prep and to get game time, not be too far behind the other teams, but also don't be too far ahead. And then come playoffs, they step up in the right manner. And I think especially for this split, where we need to see them, or we need to see how teams react to full fearless, I think that they're going to be one of the teams that maybe gets a little bit more impacted earlier on, because they are going to be trying to get the hang of everything, and then try and go more into the later stages, into the playoffs.
I agree.
That's fair. All right. Well, let's finish things out then. Winthrop University, right on schedule, right around the 2.5-hour mark. Winthrop University. So for those who don't know, buying into the league, taking over wildcard spot. This team is going to
Educated guess. Educated guess.
Yeah, educated guess. This team is going to likely be Denethor, Winnie, Darkwings, Aaron, and Sword, with mobility as a sub-support. I have this team 7th.
I have this team 9th.
9th.
10.
TDS
I
is
knew
going
it.
10. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to defend them being 9th and not 10th real quick, because I feel like,
Sure.
you know, we heard rumors about what this roster was going to be, and
That was
it
gonna be
wasn't that, and that was going to be 10th. And it's my optimistic take that with the players they have garnered, you know.
Also,
with
we had it
the
announced what this roster was going to be.
We did.
Yeah. Winthrop
yeah,
University
so-
announced what this roster was going to be, which is
Yep,
going to be
yep.
their roster from last split plus Winsome.
And
Until they
I gotta
couldn't.
tell you, I'm sure Slayer is equally as relieved as I am that Winsome did not end up on this team. If this man ended up on Winthrop, it didn't matter what was going to happen. They were most likely going to place 10th, and that guy's career would have been tanked forever. So
Because he's a support player.
the whole poaching situation is obviously really shitty for Winthrop, because there was a lot surrounding that. But I mean, I'm glad with the roster that they got at the end of the day. I think in particular, the player that stands out to me with this squad is Aaron, right? Like, Aaron most recently had a really good, I think is kind of underrating it, a really good performance in CLOL finals. I'm really excited to see him kind of take that next step. In addition to that, I think that they got a lot of the good players from SLU. I think the biggest concern that everyone had with Winthrop's squad was that mid jungle, right? And no disrespect to Sword and Wokow Trickster, whatever you want to call them, but like they weren't, in my opinion, cut out for NACL. So I do think having Winnie Darkwings can alleviate some of that a little bit. I don't think they'll be a top mid jungle duo in the league, but I do see them being able to somewhat hold their own to the point where they won't be 10th. I look at AoE and I look at this Winthrop University squad, And I just feel like Winthrop are going to be able to pull ahead. If not for the fact that I feel like their players are better, I think it is also the fact that they have cohesion built in with each other that they can kind of abuse early on to maybe get some wins or maybe get some edges over some other teams that have had less time to practice together and less time to mesh.
I do want a soapbox here for a second. I'm glad you bring up that poaching thing. Just because I have a take that seems like a lot of the community disagrees with me on, so I just want to open up somebody to tell me why I'm wrong. So the thing about the poaching restrictions, right? And so like the loophole here is poaching rules in the rule book only apply to players on the global contract database. So doesn't matter that Winthrop had already signed Winsome. Fear can come in and talk to him and make him offers all that they want, because without permission from Winthrop, because he's not on the GCD, he's not covered by poaching protections. Maybe the ceiling for that or the floor for that should be lowered a little bit. Like, to be on the GCD, I think you need to make LCS minimum. That's a big ask for NACL teams right now. The only player in the NACL right now who's on the GCD is Roamer. Nobody else is. And so it's a big ask, maybe too big of an ask. Maybe that floor should be lowered a bit. But overall, like, I'm kind of glad that floor does exist. I don't think of it as a loophole. I think it's probably a good thing that you need to be paid X amount to get protections from poaching. Like, because poaching rules are in and of themselves. Poaching rules are inherently, they are in the balance of everything, right? Balancing things between fans, league, organizations, players, all that. Poaching protections are anti-player pro-org. They prevent the player from immediately bailing to go to a place that might be better for them in the immediate future, to protect the org against not being able to reap the benefits of having scouted a player, or, you know, having been able to get a player on a good deal and being able to reap those rewards in the short term. And I just don't think you should be entitled to that protection if you're paying a guy $1,000 a month. Like, I don't think you should have full control over a player's career opportunities for $1,000 a month. I just don't think that's worth it.
No,
so
if
like,
you look at it, that is predatory for sure.
Yeah, like so that's the thing. Like, I don't know exactly what Winthrop's paying, or what any of these orgs are paying, for that matter, other than a couple of rumors here or there. I don't know. I don't even have rumors for Winthrop. I don't know what they're paying. But, like, you know, given that most players are somewhere in the like $1,000 to $2,000 range, is my understanding, a month. In NACL right now,
which is insane.
Yeah, like, that's my understanding of around where pay is at right now for the NACL. And it's like, yeah, I just don't think you should get exclusivity over a player's negotiating rights for that little money. I just don't think you should. Once the season starts, sure, you can't rip apart a player in the middle of the season. But in the off season, before roster lock, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you should buy wins. I don't think you should be able to buy Winsome's ability to search for better teams and opportunities for. Again, I'm just taking a median number here based on numbers I hear, for like $1,000 a month. It's definitely less than like $2,000 a month, and it's definitely more than like $500 a month. But like, I don't think anything in that range is enough that you should be able to be like, yeah, no, Winsome, you get no other opportunities this split. I don't know. I don't buy it. Like, you shouldn't be able to restrict other orgs from talking to them for that much.
And it's depending the opportunities as well, right? Because like you're mentioning, if it's to hamper the opportunity of a player to go to a really good roster, like, let's say, for example, it's not even Fear that poached him. It's 3 days before roster look, and it's IMT that needs it's in desperate need of a support. Like, technically speaking, it would be poaching still, but like, it's like, I don't think there's no one in the right minds that would say that's like it's fair to a player to get denied that sort of opportunity because it's poaching or anything like that. So in the same vein, like, I think I understand they are your competitors, but at the same time, they are not making a livable wage for me to argue enough. That
the rules are
Winsome
already
should take
different
a
for
lower
LCS
roster.
orgs, but I agree with you, TDS. Like, it's the same kind of idea, though. It's about opportunity, and it's like, everybody is like, every player is already in such a shit position right now in NACL. It's like, I'm sorry, I value them over org, you know.
And I can't even fault Winsome for taking the bag because
No.
you look at the two teams that he was offered to, and Fear
Also
are
bag.
just better. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
bag.
it's the yeah,
more
it's
more
crazy.
like small 80-year-old
Yeah.
granny hand satchel.
Well, and even
but
more
like,
so, I do believe Winthrop is actually paying. Not, I don't think it's just scholarship money, but even more so in like the case of some of these collegiate teams where it's like they're offering scholarships and stuff and not even real pay. It's like you're offering monopoly money that's only good at your facility, at your institution. Like, it's
Which is only gas if you have a McDonald's sponsorship.
yeah, like, you
Yeah.
don't, you know, like come on, dude. Like I don't, and I don't think that's the
Technically
case for Winthrop.
speaking-
I am hearing that Winthrop is offering legitimate pay, not just
Also, I'm pretty sure even if he
Scholarship.
goes to another team, he still gets the scholarship rights. Like I don't think they have any
I don't
way
even
to
think
revoke it.
that was the
Or
thing.
they
I
would?
thought originally that he was getting offered a scholarship and was going to school there.
No, but
Now
it's summer.
I am based on what I'm hearing, I don't think that's the case. Like these
No, 'cause it's
slew
summer.
guys, and I guess this is to get into the next point about Winthrop. How does this team even like exist? Because my understanding, the slew guys are not enrolling at Winthrop University.
No,
Yeah.
They are being
it's
paid.
a summer loophole.
Yeah.
Well, it's
I mean,
like
this is
loophole meaning what? Like because
Well,
they're like I think they're like there's no rules that you have to be your collegiate roster if you're in NACL. NACL isn't
Yeah.
small. You don't have to be enrolled in the college. Maryville
I
can
think
run any
specifically if
set
you're
of
not
5
an
players
import,
they want.
especially, right? Because if you're an import, you do have to have some sort of.
Winsome's
Or wait,
got a
actually,
green
no,
card.
that's for OQs. No, that
And
doesn't even
either way,
apply for
Winsome's got a
NACL.
green card. Winsome's a U.S. citizen.
No, but I mean, like, I thought it was only applied for imports, but not even for that. Like, I remember NACL does have one import rule because I remember
Yeah,
there was all
NACL
that drama
allows you to have one
with
import, but they would
Shogo
need to have
about
like
that.
a work visa. But none of that applies
That's
for
actually
Winsome
correct.
anyway, because
Yeah, no.
Winsome's American.
well, then this is just as simple as Winthrop are using their esports budget to salary players. I mean, that's just what it is.
Is that not
I mean,
crazy?
it's-
like that's if you're like a director of athletics at a college, like this is like unheard of to me for college athletics to like
Well,
be
I don't
spending
think
like school money on fielding players that don't attend your school. That's crazy to me.
I guess that is
And surprising
that
too,
is
that it's even allowed.
somewhat weird, but I also don't think it's as hard of a spin to say, hey, we're going to use this money to You could quite literally be like, hey, we're going to use this money to play ourselves on the same platform as Maryville. All right?
Sure.
And
But you're not going to field players that attend your school.
yeah, that is weird. But you could say, look, we're going to put ourselves on the same platform as Maryville.
Sure.
And we're gonna, which will be in advertising. You could pitch this as an investment.
I get
is
it.
what I'm trying to say.
It's just
you could
very
pitch
strange
this
to
as yeah. And also, just to quickly say back to the Winsome point, morally, it's scummy. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like this isn't kind of scummy, like what he did. But in his position, would I, even if the money wasn't that different, go to Fear? Also, very much so. Yes, I would also still have done it. So
yeah.
as long as you're recognizing it's scummy, but it's also career-wise, potentially financially wise, the smarter move. That's where I think most people should be landing with this.
I don't even think it's scummy actually. After hearing that, I don't even think it's scummy because I think it would be scummy if he's taking the scholarship and then denies to play with them. But he's not
That
even
would be
taking
really
that
scummy.
apparently. So
That
like,
would-
if it's just money, it's a player not signing for your team and signing for another one at the end of the
Well,
day.
it's,
like
it's
he
agreeing
wasn't
to sign.
officially
It's
with
like
the
breaking
team.
verbal. It's even past breaking verbal. It's breaking contract. Like they had signed.
Did
and now he's
like here's the
reneging on
thing,
it.
like, and this is something that obviously I have no information about, right? If he actually signed a contract about it, okay, that's a scummy.
I
If he
believe
didn't,
did.
and it's
I believe he
mainly
did.
between verbal and not, I don't think it's a scummy because that's just like that's the game of the players, and I mean that in every sport. Unless you're tied by a contract, you have to always, doesn't matter what team you're playing for, what team you love, or what you're doing, you have to look out for the best possible opportunity for yourself.
Yeah.
That's the
yeah.
only rule that matters.
do believe
because teams
so.
are not loyal to you.
Yeah, I do believe he
so
was
TJ, I think he signed a
legitimately under
contract.
contract, though. Yeah,
Okay,
like, that's
if
the
it's
part that
contract,
makes it
then it's a
poaching.
scummy.
Yeah.
I would
Okay,
hope that
if it is
Winthrop isn't
contractual, then yeah.
announcing rosters if they don't have them under contract.
Yeah.
So I would
So
assume
Okay,
I
yeah,
believe
no.
he had signed with Winthrop, but then decided, nah, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Okay, yeah, then at that point, I do agree that's a little bit scummy because it is
Yeah.
contractually, but at the same time, I cannot blame him, but it is scummy. To a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Any competitor in Winsome's shoes would do the same thing, most likely, because career-wise, it's a better choice, right? Winthrop, I don't know when the agreement or the negotiations or whatever to acquire multiple players from SLU went through, but if Winsome looked at the team and saw that it was
This is
Winthrop
before any of the
University
SLU stuff, for
plus
sure.
him, yeah. So if he saw the team and he was saying, okay, it's me plus Winthrop, who are not only did they struggle to get into the promotion tournament, right? But they are also struggling in the sense that they don't really have many players to play around. And then I'm looking at Fear, who are offering me potentially a bigger bag or whatever, and also a chance to compete and place higher. Like, who in their right mind is going to take the first option? Like, Winthrop, before they got all of these players, were 10th place, and honestly might have been
There's
11th,
something
right
about
next
it.
to a team I could make with Clash. Because, like, I really was like, I'm glad they switched up their roster, because if this was a Winthrop squad I was going to be talking about, where it was initially their entire CLL squad plus Winsome, there would have been like they would have been like 11th place in everyone's mind, and there isn't even a 10th team. It's just air. But I do think, going back to Winsome, I think he made the better choice, even if it is scummy. I think any competitor in his shoes would have done the same thing at the end of the day. Even if he knew that the SLU roster would have come over, I still think Winsome would have made the same choice. Right, so at the end of the day, no matter how you splice it, Winsome goes to Fear, and I don't really think there's anything Winthrop can do to change that with the time that they had and the players they had available.
So, I agree. I do want to bring us back to the rankings, because I think we kind of sidetracked, and I don't think everybody gave their reasoning for why Winthrop's where they are. So, or at least, okay, I don't think I gave my reasoning. So I have them 9th because I will accept the idea that, or not the idea, I think it's honestly fact that, like, Winnie and Darkwing, like, most of our question marks with the first roster announced was, I'll put it a little bluntly here, that Sword and Trickster were going to get smacked around. Like,
Yeah.
That's what most people had the most issues with, right? I accept that Winnie and Darkwings are by far definitely upgrades here. Definitely playing on such an upswing, too, with how they were in CLOL. I do think that I don't know how this team is going to work and mesh at first. I would very likely expect it to be a slow team, because we talked about how Winthrop played in their previous roster, mostly how Denethor played, especially. Like, Trickster was constantly playing to give leads to mid and top side, right?
Yep.
They believed that Mobility and Chukis would be able, in most collegiate situations, to win their 2v2, right? They picked aggressive Lucianami lanes. That's what they tried to do. They played to get Denethor ahead in points and try to get Sword in a comfortable spot. What do you do now? Denethor is definitely not going to be able to, as good as we think Denethor is, I agree he's great, he's good, he's going to come in and be good. He is not going to be able to get his ones against 7 of these top laners.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So you got to help him if you're winning. Darkwings wasn't the most impressive mid laner with Wildcard. He had good points, but he also faltered. I felt like they were really wishy-washy. I think Wildcard as a team were wishy-washy at points. So Darkwings is going to need some help. Sword is playing support. I think Aaron is good, but there's no synergy there right now. Maybe minimal. They're going to need help too. I think this team is about to get stretched really far thin. I don't know what sort of play style they're going to put together. And even if they do find a good one, with how last minute this roster is, definitely, like, second to last to probably CCG, maybe third with AoE, like, it's going to take them a bit to get going. So I just think it's just poor timing. The situation's not fun. It's a bit better than what the roster would have been, but I still think they're in relegation.
Yeah.
See,
I agree.
Here's where I think your mistake is, Slayer, and this is where I think I come up to 7, where you're at 9. You're thinking about this as a modified Winthrop University roster. I'm thinking about this as a modified Wildcard Gaming roster.
Okay, that's fair, but you still have to admit that, like, it's not going to be easy to just integrate a role swap Sword and Denethor to a different style.
Although
I mean,
Sword has
he's role
played
swapping
support
from
before.
his role swap. He was support before.
But he was mid
but
lane.
he
He was
wasn't
mid lane
impressive.
before he was support too. He was.
But
Yeah,
he-
he's
I will
getting
say
tossed
he
around like
he's
a
spinning it
This
around.
guy can't.
Yeah,
boom, boom,
TDS's
boom,
point.
boom.
He hasn't really been.
He hasn't
like,
been support in a while.
He hasn't been great.
No,
And
and I
he
don't.
wasn't
it-
great.
And this is the highest level competition he's ever going to play.
Well, I mean, he's played support in NACL
sorry.
before, unsuccessfully, but
Right,
he's done
yeah.
it.
Yeah, we need to remember which team that was, because that was Fly. I don't remember
Fam.
what sort
Fly
of Fly.
Fam.
Fly Fam, and
He also
got
did it at
smacked
100 Thieves
in the end.
Next
So, like,
in a Proving Grounds tournament once upon a time.
yeah, like,
Had a little bit better
I
success there.
I'm just not sold on Sword like you're
I
mentioning. And
agree. I'm
wanna-
not.
I
Listen,
do
I'm not
wanna
super
bring up
sold on
something
Sword either,
quickly.
but I also wasn't super sold on Doxa.
True.
And they figured
But
it out.
That around Doxa, there's more things to try and bring up than there is for Sword. Because one thing that I do want to bring up is the point on Denethor. And I think Denethor is going to be facing the everlasting thing that most great players face, and is if you're a big fish in a small pond, or if you're actually a big fish. And that's the thing that Denethor has to come into now, because
Yeah.
like Slayer is mentioning, I think he's better than, what, 2 top laners? And that's saying too much, because I think that he's better than 100%, which is Crimson. And then he's, I would say, arguably equal to, I would say, around Tenacity and
I
Moose
think he's better
Hater.
than Moot. Okay, I think he's.
I would say
better
arguably
yeah.
around those two. The rest are above him, 100%.
Could mechanically be
So,
better
like,
than Niles.
I don't think he's better than Niles. Like, every time that they played, Niles has just had the better of him. Every time. And it's not even close.
To
Like,
be
the
fair,
only
that's always in
player-
games that matter, and that's where the Winthrop choking thing comes in.
Yeah, but now it's going to be a game that matters every time, because every game that you lose is a game closer to relegation.
That's true.
And they bought their spot, so they're
And they
pressured.
bought their spot, exactly. They didn't even qualify here. I will say, though, I'm glad that they changed a W for a W, so it went from wildcard to Winthrop, just both teams with the W changing places. Especially now, they need the Ws more, because they are going to be facing a lot of Ls in the split.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So that's the thing. I think I've been underrated. So I've been underrating this slew core every split for a while now.
Fair enough.
And they finished 4th last split in the regular season. I gotta I think I gotta pay him some respect. I agree. I'm not crazy about Sword and support, but I think Aaron's good enough. I think they'll be able to figure something out. I also think there's a pretty solid chance that mobility comes in on support at some point this season. Once he gets more time to adapt to the role. He seems real on board for it. I think he and Aaron have chatted about it quite a bit, pretty publicly on Twitter. I think mobility will be coming in support at some point once he gets a couple more reps in.
He's going to come in as support.
I think he will, yeah. And yeah, and I don't know. I'm hopeful for Denethor to thrive. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big prove it split for him. It's all going to live and die on Denethor. But I think he's been one of the most talented players outside of Tier 2. Coming into the last split, and I'm very happy to see him get this chance. I hope it works out. I hope that they can put some wins together here. Yeah, and I mean, you know what? Slew are CLOL champions. They have finished 4th last split. I gotta just start respecting Winnie, Darkwings, and Aaron. This is the split where I'm gonna do it.
Well,
I respect
that
that,
they are missing
honestly.
a pivotal player, though.
They are.
I would arguably say the most pivotal
Listen,
player.
Surdy wasn't there when they got
need.
4th in NACL, man. Quacker was there.
Yeah, but they weren't there when he got first in NACL.
Also correct. Anyway, only other thing I have to say here, the Blue Otter guys have taken to calling this team Slew Woo, and I love that. So
I like that.
start doing
Yeah,
that.
I'll start calling him Slew. I mean, it's better than FXS. Still better.
It is so much better than FXS.
I mean, anytime anyone has the words, the letters F and X next to each other, I just think about the channel, and I don't know if it's maybe just brain rot, but it's like I hate having to think, because that channel puts out nothing but garbage. So who am I to say? But I don't know. I think if we're going for names, Slew Woo definitely rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I'm gonna be calling him Slew Woo all night, all day, all split. All right, that's a good a spot to end as any. We're gonna call it a break there. I probably can't record next week, so maybe there'll be an episode without me. Maybe there won't be an episode for 2 weeks.
I'll pilot the sticks for you.
If you want to pilot the sticks for me, you can.
I'll be
for
going
sure.
away as well, so I'm more than likely won't be here.
Okay, well,
I mean, I can maybe maybe take.
Well, we'll talk about this
Something up
off
with Flyer.
recording.
We'll talk. Yeah,
yeah.
we've been on here for 3 hours. We'll figure.
Yeah, we've been
We'll
here for
figure
3
it out.
hours. This episode will probably be a little bit less than 3 hours. I'll probably cut some stuff out. And yeah, thank you all for tuning on in. It's been a party. Always love to have
Thank you,
these nice,
Quax.
long, deep dive episodes filled with clips to pull from in the future. And gonna be a banger NACL split, so make sure you tune in this weekend.